Hey, gals and guys, this is Michael Ferrari of Cinema de Meep. Welcome to episode 32 of the Retro Movie Love podcast. And with me, as always, is Ben Schur. Hey, Ben, how's it going?
Oh, it's going really well. I'm so excited to be here to discuss Brian De Palma, who I've had such a complicated relationship with over the many years that I've been more or less obsessed with him.
I know. He's one of my favorite filmmakers and definitely a controversial filmmaker for some. But I think we could agree on some very fine films today that he made. And what we're doing today is we're doing five each, our top fives. But so there's some crossover because of that. And there's one film in particular that we absolutely love by Brian De Palma. So we're kind of doing like five each, so we could have 10 different films.
And really, it's just kind of like our cumulative top 10, because I definitely, all the ones on your list, except for one, which we'll discuss, are, they might as well be my top five. So it's kind of, we're having a David Cronenberg-esque, or maybe, a Brian De Palma-esque, we're having a kind of conjoined top 10 list. We're like Margot Kidder.
Or it could all be a dream. We don't know. We'll see when we wake up tomorrow. So thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully you're still with us after all these episodes. It's nice to be at 32. It's a nice solid number for us. So let's discuss some recently seen. On the last episode, I blew through a lot of recently seen, so I don't have a lot today. But I'm curious to see what you've been listening to, or rather, what you've been watching lately.
God, I'm realizing now I should have written out a list, and I didn't. But let me see. What have I seen? I saw something in the theater. Oh, well, okay. I saw The Conjuring 2, which we should discuss, because we initially, I think, disagreed about it. And then I saw it again, and then I agreed with you more, although still maybe not quite as much. So do you want to share what your thoughts on The Conjuring 2 were?
I think I mentioned on the podcast how much I love The Conjuring 2, and I think, to me, it's one of the great sequels of all time. I'm not one who's going to rave about, like, ghosty, supernatural kind of movies. They're not always my cup of tea, but when I'm in the mood for one, I'm really in the mood for one, and Conjuring 2 really filled what I needed from a ghosty supernatural movie, because it gave me something a lot more than a ghosty supernatural movie. It gave me a story about the Warrens and a love story and great actors and just very convincing storyline that I just really found myself just kind of really engrossed in. And I saw it twice in the theater. I went by myself the first time, and then I took my wife, who was also really into The Conjuring 1 and Insidious. She likes the Insidious films especially. And she really loved it as well.
The first time I saw it, I saw the date open, and I was kind of like, yeah, this kind of sucks. And I think I think part of that is because the first Conjuring, it was so... First of all, I did not find the second... I mean, I don't really find most movies scary, but the first Conjuring made me jump a lot, and I was in suspense a lot, and it was, so it worked on me in that way. And this one, it really didn't either time. Although I confess, the first time I saw it, I went to the bathroom during what I thought was the best scare scene, which was the first scene with the nun in Vera Farmiga's house. So me missing that scene, I think, actually ruined... It messed up the whole tone of the movie for me, and I think that might have been affected my opinion of it the first time. So I thought, I do think James Wan's ghost imagery is getting a little bit tired. Like I'm a little bit like whatever about it, but yeah, but I loved all the weird things about it. I loved the romance with the Warrens, and I loved that Patrick Wilson sings, and I loved that. Obviously the 70s clothes and decor were perfect. And the movie kept sticking with me after I saw it. And I felt the need to return to it again. And the second time I saw it, I really loved it. And I felt like I just could watch it forever. And I realized that it's kind of like, for me, a lot like the original Amityville Horror, which the first time I saw it, I was like, this isn't scary. I'm not impressed. I didn't like it. But then over the years, I became obsessed with it just because the world and the characters were so kind of pleasing. And it really has that feel of kind of like a classy, wonderful, but maybe not that scary 70s horror movie. And the funny thing is, with 70s horror movies, I love that. Like, I will always embrace that. But for some reason, since it was a new horror movie, I was poo-pooing it. So that's what I needed to realize. And I think it is very rich. And I think that there's a lot of great stuff there with the way that people who have survived traumas come together, and kind of like the conflation of supernatural haunting with trauma, which the first one did brilliantly too. So I love it. It's funny. Now I can't wait for it to come out so I can buy it. Like, it's totally just like, and like I feel like I might end up rewatching it more than I rewatched the first one.
Yay.
Because even though the first one is scarier, when I watch it now, I'm kind of like, okay, now that I know all the jump scares, you know, I still love it, but it's not, maybe it's lost something. Whereas this, since I think so, the second one is so much about the characters and Vera Farmiga being just her amazingly herself. I think it's going to be really great for repeated viewings.
Yeah, it's just so rich. It's so like full of, I mean, from the design of the movie, the art direction, and just the camera, the way he, you know, much like the way the director we're talking about today, just kind of really has a great command of the images, and just the way he sets up the story too, just so well done. I just got so engrossed in it right from the beginning, and the second time just even more so. I just found myself just sitting there with a big smile on my face. And even like I said, maybe some of the scares aren't as scary, but you know, I had kind of like the first one to me. I don't rewatch The Conjuring 1 as much. I think for some reason Insidious 1 and 2 have more replay value than The Conjuring 1, even though I thought The Conjuring 1 was pretty great. But I have a feeling that I'm going to be revisiting Conjuring 2 a lot on Blu-ray when it comes out. So I'm glad you saw it twice. Yay!
It really is wonderful to see a horror movie where you can just luxuriate in its style, which is so rare now. But speaking of which, another movie that definitely had style you could luxuriate in, the other movie I saw was The Neon Demon, which I respected because it was gorgeous, and it was totally violated any kind of like expectation that we have of pacing in a Hollywood movie, but I kind of hated it, I gotta say. Like, and it's like, whereas The Conjuring 2, like, the more I thought about it, the more I loved it, and I developed this kind of warm feeling for it. The Demon, the more I thought about it, the more I just thought it was really obnoxious and stupid. I think one of the reviews I read said that it's like something that your like pre-teenage pseudo-intellectual friend tells you when you're in 7th grade that you don't remember. Like, it thinks it's so serious, and really it's just so basic. But I mean, any movie with that much style, I can appreciate. There were a few scenes when I laughed, but I don't think I'll ever watch it again. Let's see, what else have I? And then I've been watching a lot of Blu-rays. I mean, this has just been like crazy Blu-ray month. I got Places in the Heart and Julia from Twilight Time. After I spent like the whole Twilight Time sale being like, do I want to get Places in the Heart? No, I'm going to resist. And the minute it was over, I was like, oh my God, I need to get Places in the Heart. So I ended up paying the full price for it. And I'm like, this is why you just got to buy shit when it's on sale.
Right.
But loved. I know you don't love Places in the Heart. I must say, I fell in love with that movie very deeply, and Sally in it. It might even be worth a rewatch for you. I'd consider it.
It's been 32 years since I last seen it. I fell asleep on it in the movie theater.
And I mean, how old were you when that came out?
I was like 9, so...
I love that you saw it when you were 9, but maybe one of those like few... Like, if I were 9 when I saw this movie, I would have totally not liked it either, but it's good. And then on the opposite spectrum, I got Return of the Living Dead, which, as I said to you on Facebook earlier, I love it, you know, and I had really fond memories of it, and you said it wasn't your favorite, and watching it again, I could really see why. And this is the thing for me. I'm not that taken with the main protagonists who the movie starts with, like in the guys who work at the funeral home. I think they're kind of like whatever. The punks I'm obsessed with, and I want every minute of it to be about them, but it's not. And that's the problem. But I do love the zombies.
Yeah, it was a movie I was never that big. I know this is going to maybe like upset a few people, but I was never that big on Return of the Living Dead growing up. I just always preferred the Romero movies. Something about its vibe and its comedy just didn't really appeal to me. And yet I somehow really enjoyed the sequel which came out a couple years later, and I know this. A lot of people hate the sequel, so I don't know. I just had that effect for me. But over the years, I've warmed up to it, and I appreciate definitely some things about it. And the punk stuff, like you mentioned, is great, and the music is great.
I love the sound.
The soundtrack's pretty awesome, but it's still not one of my favorite zombie movies. But I picked up the Blu-ray. It's one of the few things I watched recently, and a lot of great extras on it. A lot of great pre-existing extras too, like the More Brains documentary, and I didn't own any previous incarnations on Blu-ray, so I wasn't upgrading. So it was nice to get this package and the new artwork and all of that stuff. But I'm glad I own it, and I'm definitely going to revisit it once in a while.
It looks great. It looks really, really, really good.
It's really good. Scream Factory always does a good job of that sort of thing, and I think fans of the movie will definitely want to have it in their collection, and be very pleased for sure.
I haven't dug into the extras yet. I'm really excited to.
Yeah, there's definitely some good stuff on there. If you haven't seen that More Brains documentary, you'll really like it. It's pretty comprehensive.
The fact that there were two, and I'm going to get into this too, there were two Linnea Quigley Blu-ray releases this week is like the best thing that ever happened.
What was the other one?
The other one was Ferrari Babes and the Slime Ball Ballerama. Although that might not have been this week. I think the US version came out this week. I got the UK version, which came out I think last week. But and that's if I used to love Return of the Living Dead, and watching it this time I was like not so as much into it. I also watched three movies that I fucking loved for my whole life, but watching them on Blu-ray I loved them ever so much more. And that's Sorority Babes and the Slime Ball Ballerama. If you like this movie, the transfer taken from the original negative is a total revelation. I mean, it's only ever been like the VHS Laserdisc transfer ever on DVD. And it's a really beautifully filmed. Like it has a real visual purpose. And there's a great audio commentary with David Dakota, who I love, talking about it. And the movie, it was truly like seeing it for the first time and just loving it as much as I did when I was like 7. And I was like, oh my God, boobs and malls and bowling and imps and murder. It's so close to my heart.
Is there a difference between the UK and US versions? Is that why you got the UK version? Or?
Well, this is like Blu-ray Arcana, but I've heard that Full Moon, who releases their own Blu-rays in the US, their Blu-rays have issues, like they're too compressed and the transfers are a little bit mangled because of that, whereas 88 Films releases them in the UK. And just the visual, that they're a higher bit rate, and allegedly the quality is significantly better. And I just knew that I've always had really great experiences with 88 Films, so I figured whatever. And it was actually cheaper to order it from the UK too.
Interesting, because I know that the Full Moon version of Tourist Trap was edited, I think.
Yes.
Their version, so I had to hold on to the DVD version.
I know, me too. There's apparently like a German Blu-ray that's like $100 that's uncut, but I think, I don't know, the DVD of Tourist Trap looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, definitely. And what are the other two films besides Sorority Babes? You said there were 3.
Crimes of Passion, which, as you know, is a DVD that I had the original non-anamorphic Anchor Bay DVD from the late 90s, but I never got the special edition DVD, and I have not let myself watch it because I didn't want to watch it till I could have a good transfer. So it's been, decade. About maybe a decade or two since I've seen it, like a long time. And, oh my God, I just loved it so much. And I shared it with Jason, and I was nervous about this because I shared Crimes of Passion with a douchey close friend of mine who I'm not at all friends with anymore, who had questionable taste when we were kids, and he just hated it and tore it to shreds. And like I felt so bad. When you share something you really love with someone and they just like tear it up, and it's awful, especially when you're young and you're stupid. Watching it now, I was like, oh, it's just because he was didn't have interesting taste at all, and he was a fool. This is the same person who said that he thought they should that Persona would be better if they remade it with Julia Roberts and Sandra Bullock. I'm serious.
Yeah, then
problem.
He has some problem. He has some serious issues then.
Yes. Well, there's a reason he's not in my life anymore. But Jason loved it. And I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, this is an amazing movie. And, like, this person who was special to me feels the same way. The Blu-ray looks great. I love it even. it is so wonderful to me, and I'm going to have a little bit of a spoiler, that there's this movie that really digs deep into how fucked up everybody's like kind of psychosexual lives can be. I mean, at least whatever, I relate to that. And how like our deepest, darkest kind of emotional issues and the things from our life history just get all caught up in our sexuality. But then it has this great happy ending, and it's so well deserved. And it's just like, oh my God, this is the best romantic movie. I love it. And it's funny. I don't think I really got how much of a kind of comedy it is. Like, it's almost more of a comedy than a thriller, but it's like truly unlike anything else. And the Blu-ray transfer is so fabulous. I just caught all these new things because of all the kind of film knowledge I picked up over the last few decades, like how indebted it is to Joseph von Sternberg, who I love, with all the layers of veils and lights and curtains. And it's such a beautiful movie. Kathleen Turner, I had a whole new appreciation for her performance. Such a favorite. Love it, love it, love it. So good to see it again. And also Annie Potts, oh my God, she is gives the most depressing, unlikable, just deadly performance in this movie, and it's so impressive because is there any actress more like awesome or more likable or cool or like sexy or perfect, and she's just like totally showing you that she can be the opposite of everything that she is in Ghostbusters and Pretty in Pink.
And she did it the same year as Ghostbusters too, which is pretty amazing.
Amazing. She's like, look, bitches, that I deserve like major Oscars that people are too stupid to give me. Have you seen the Crimes of Passion Blu-ray yet?
No, I ordered it. I was waiting for the price to go down a bit. It was on Amazon for like $40 for a long time, and finally went down to like $25. And I pre-ordered it, or ordered it rather. I think it's already streeted. So I have that special unrated edition of the DVD, the Anchor Bay one. So I've been watching that throughout the years several times. So it's definitely served its purpose, and I can't wait to upgrade it to the new transfer. And there's some new extras maybe, right, on there?
Yes, there's a new interview with Barry Sandler, who I love, especially because he's gay. And there is a new interview with the guy who did the music, which is pretty interesting.
I remember the commentary from the Anchor Bay DVD being pretty fun because Ken Russell unedited, and then he just kind of at some point in the commentary he's done and just like leaves, and then the writer has to just kind of pick up the rest of it, which is
that sounds about right. It sounds like Ken Russell was a major diva, as of course you would imagine based on any of his films.
We love you, Ken.
And the last one, sorry, there's one more. I'm just going to go on forever. I want to plug my friend at Foreign Blu-ray Exchange, my favorite local Blu-ray place, which I have to take you to, because he got Shivers, the David Cronenberg movie, which also I had it on VHS tape, and I never got the DVD, so I just haven't been able to watch it in a long time. And the Arrow Blu-ray is spectacular, and I always loved this movie, but I was like, no, like I like love this movie. This movie is everything to me. Like this is like my favorite movie. So I've been just like rewatching all of David Cronenberg's early movies and just being so happy.
I picked up The Brood on Criterion during that Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble.
Have you watched it yet?
And I watched it, yeah. Some great extras on there. It's kind of eye-opening, too.
You know, I haven't watched the extras on that yet. This is the problem lately. I mean, thank God I can afford Blu-rays again, since there was like a period where I couldn't and I was going to have to slit my wrists. But, like, I've been getting so many because they keep coming out that I don't even have time to watch the extras.
Oh, yeah, you should watch the Brood extras. At first I thought, there's no new David Cronenberg stuff, and I was kind of bummed out about that. But there's some really good interviews on there. Some of them kind of took me by surprise, so it was definitely worth picking up and upgrading from the old MGM DVD. It looks really good.
So what have you seen?
Besides that, I bought 3 other Criterion Blu-rays. I'm trying to think what they are right now. Of course, a De Palma movie, Dress to Kill. I hadn't owned that until now. And The Graduate, which I hadn't watched in a long time. And I'm glad I picked up the Criterion because I got to revisit that movie, which I haven't seen in a long time. And I really enjoyed that. And I forgot how influential that movie really is. So many movies have tried to be The Graduate.
Totally.
But there's only one Graduate.
That movie also never really had a good transfer until the Criterion, so I was happy they released it.
That's true, yeah. There was one more Criterion that I'm blanking on that I got but it'll come to me later. I haven't really watched much, like I said. I got also, besides the Return of the Living Dead Blu-ray from Scream Factory, I also picked up the Blu-ray for Bad Moon, the werewolf movie from the 90s.
Never seen that.
With Michael Paré and Mariel Hemingway. And that movie is a lot of fun. I think you would enjoy it. It's pretty tightly paced. It's like 79 minutes.
Oh, I like that.
So it's just a lot of like gore and basically a mom and her kid versus a werewolf movie. And Eric Red did it, and he wrote Near Dark and The Hitcher, and directed a movie that I absolutely love called Body Parts. He does a good job here. It's a really good little werewolf movie, and I had a lot of fun revisiting it. And Michael Paré is on the extras, and the little kid in the movie, Mason Gamble, who was Dennis the Menace in that feature film version. He's grown up, and he has some fun anecdotes about the movie and being recognized as Mason Gamble. So it was fun revisiting that movie, and it also has like the unrated version, but it's really just not really much different from the theatrical version. There's some more nudity and so on, but I thought it was a lot of fun to pick up. I'm glad it was released on Blu-ray, and I like seeing some of these Warner titles come out on Blu-ray, and even if it's through like something like Scream Factory, just putting them out. Yay. And that's it that I've watched. I mean, other than a certain TV show that everyone else has been watching in the world that I know, at least in my world.
And we've been like clamoring at your door, like banging down the windows, like it's Spellbinder, being like, have you watched it yet? Like, tell us what you think.
And that's Stranger Things. And yeah, I watched it, and I finished it today.
Oh, don't! I'm on episodes. I just finished episode 6. Don't tell me the last 2 episodes.
Okay, I won't tell you the last 2 episodes. Other than what do you think about the show so far?
I'm obsessed with it. Like I just love it so much. I mean, I think probably a big part of the thrill. Any show that gives Winona Ryder 8 hours of an incredibly juicy part, it just has so much of my goodwill already. That it could be like the worst piece of shit ever, and I would just be like, "This is brilliant. I love it." But I think it's perfect. Like I've been saying to a lot of people because there is this new kind of trend now of, these movies that sort of take from the late 70s, early 80s Steven Spielberg movies and the late 70s, early 80s John Carpenter movies like Super 8 and Midnight Special. Mm-hmm. You could say It Follows, but I don't count It Follows among this group because I really loved It Follows. But Super 8 and Midnight Special, both, they really left something to be desired to me. And the whole time I was watching them, I was just kind of like, yeah, I wish I were watching E.T. or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And this movie, I mean, it literally takes like every single trope of every sci-fi and horror movie from like 1975 to 1983 and just like puts them all together. And that for me, like you'd think I would be like, again, just missing watching all of those movies, but it just works and it feels new and exciting to me. And I just, oh my God, I love it so much. I never want it to end. I'm going to die when it's over. So now, if you tell me you hate it, I've kind of been expecting that you're going to hate it, like just because I have this feeling. But I'm dying to know what you think.
The worst piece of shit show I've ever seen. No, I'm just kidding. I really like you said, it blends all those things together, and I wasn't sure what I was going to make of it, but I ended up finding myself really digging it and liking the characters and just kind of this concoction, this very 80s. Amalgam of all the things we grew up on, all this geek culture that we grew up with, and mixing it together and seeing how it sticks. And it's kind of a big risk to do that.
Yeah.
Because it has gone, like you said, gone wrong, very easily wrong in so many movies. And I feel like in genre efforts, has gone wrong. But I don't know, it somehow works for me, and I think because the actors are good, Winona Ryder in the lead, brilliant performance. I think. She's in histrionics for like you said, nearly 8 hours of TV, but she does it in a certain way, a special way that kind of is endearing. I mean, I feel like she feels very authentic all the way through.
Yeah.
I never feel like she's acting, where it's a role where you could easily say, okay, she's just being over the top and acting and being the distraught mother, and that's boring. But I feel like it's very nuanced performance, and I just really feel her pain and her emotions, and I just love the places she goes with it. And so her at the helm really has me on board, of course, and then just adding all these little 80s things and having these really good kid actors all doing a really good job just kind of makes it all really gel together. Having said that, the show does have some problems, so it's not completely perfect for me. I think definitely in later episodes, some of the CGI kind of takes me out of it.
I've been worrying about that. Because shows always fuck up at the end.
Yeah, and I think it does do that. It goes to those places, but it does hold its integrity with the other things, with the characters and the performances. So it kind of keeps you there. But I'm always, bad CGI will always take me out of everything, and just is the way it goes. The other problem I had with it was, surprisingly, I love the score. I think the score is absolutely brilliant, and I actually wish most of the show was just the score. But the songs on the soundtrack, I had a problem with. They just kind of feel like they're thrown in there, and also they all feel a little bit on the nose. Have you? What are your thoughts on the songs?
I see what you're saying. I don't mind it because I love those songs. I'm like, whatever. But it is, and they're also not temporally correct. Like Hazy Shade of Winter was well after 1983.
Right.
But I see what you're saying. I don't mind, but I totally see it.
Yeah, I'm not actually. It doesn't really bother. I mean, I guess it does bother me to some degree that they're not of the time period. Some of them, but I just felt like they were just thrown in there because it's winter, so Hazy Shade of Winter, and there's a funeral, so Elegia. They're like my wife pointed it out too, and we're both very much fans of this music and music of that time period, and I greatly admire some of the songs and the choices they used. But I also felt like they were just a little bit too on the nose to put you into the 80s-ness of it. But I think a lot of the other details of the time were pretty spot on, and I like that it was it was shot in Georgia, but it feels like Indiana. I feel like that could have been a problem. Like a lot of productions are going to places like Georgia and Louisiana because they're cheaper, but then they just feel like Georgia and Louisiana. But I felt like they really captured a time and a place really well, and I'm really big on geography in movies and capturing a time and feeling and atmosphere, and I think the show does that really well. I do feel like at 8 hours it's kind of stretching a bit, the plot. Mm-hmm. So there's some episodes where it kind of lags, and I felt myself not as riveted, but so maybe it could have been like a 6-hour miniseries to me. That's just my attention span these days. A little bit more tightly paced. Some things where characters are kind of going in circles a little bit could have been a little bit more tight. But I greatly admire the show, and I really enjoyed it, and I want a season 2. And I want a season 2 that's set in 1985 and 1987. And if it's 1987, I want it to be slickly produced, and I want it to be like a Lost Boys or a Monster Squad movie or show.
That would be so great if it changes formally every scene with each year. I mean, that would be very appropriate. That'd be so good.
I feel like the story kind of ran its course, and I don't need a continuation of the same story. I want something completely different at a different time, or at least a time period in the 80s. And
I wonder if that's what they'll end up doing. Because the funny thing is, it almost feels like a Ryan Murphy show that actually works. Like,
right? Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Where it takes all the different things from all the different movies, but then actually puts like a good narrative and well-developed characters underneath it.
Yeah, it definitely worked, and those things, which are very important to keep you interested, having characters you can get behind and an atmosphere that really sets the mood. But yeah, Ryan Murphy shows don't exactly. They don't really keep you gripped throughout. So
I should say always, because I did love the first 2 seasons of American Horror Story, and People versus OJ is not the same thing. But I did think that People versus OJ was brilliant. So I don't want to be one of those people who's always like, oh, I don't like any Ryan Murphy. But the last few seasons of American Horror Story have left something to be desired for me.
I've only watched the first, 2 or 3 seasons of American Horror Story. I really like the first one. And I haven't seen the OJ thing. So I'm not a big Ryan Murphy. I don't know a lot of his stuff, but just based on what I've seen so far. But I love this show, and I think I can't wait to see what they do next. So that's what we've recently seen. Now we should just get into the man, the myth, the legend, Brian De Palma.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Well, at some point it occurs to me we should talk about the documentary De Palma, either at the beginning or after. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it, no. But you could talk about it, please.
Maybe well, I'm interested to know, because most De Palma fans I know are just adoring it. And I have to say, I didn't totally adore it. I did like it a lot. He's great to listen to. And especially his stories about everything, like, up until probably Carrie, maybe, are really, really riveting. And he's a great storyteller. But the thing that drove me crazy, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, is because I feel like nobody ever talks about Brian De Palma films the way that I see them and the way that I want them to be talked about. So I'm hoping we will. I don't know if I'm articulate enough right now to say the things that I would like to say about him, but all the film critics and whatever always say that his detractors, and even I think the people who celebrate him, often emphasize that he's a style over substance filmmaker. Now, first of all, I don't think that style over substance thing exists. I think that style is substance and substance is style. I mean, something like The Neon Demon, for example, which has like no screenplay to speak of, but only style. I mean, that's still its substance, but it's just not satisfying because it's not having a narrative. But that is almost never to me a problem with Brian De Palma's films. I think obviously his movies are stylistic tour de forces, and we'll talk about that. But his great movies, and there are a lot of them, have amazing characters with very fascinating dynamics between them. They raise these really interesting questions about gender and sexuality and being an outsider and being in a small town or living in cities. And they are just really, the fascinating thing is they're amazing slice of life movies to me. I feel like nobody ever says that, but I really think it's true. I think their characters are so rich. I mean, once in a paper when I was writing about Dressed to Kill, which we could talk about later, I said that the first 25 minutes were like a Virginia Woolf novel. And to this day, I think that that's really true, because it's on one hand, it's all style, there's no speaking, but it's all about Angie Dickinson's internal life. And there's so much of that in his movies. And I felt that he didn't talk about it at all. He didn't say anything about the film's characters. He didn't say anything about their narratives, why he was drawn to those stories. And the stories always seem so personal and so torn directly from his id. I want to hear about that shit. Instead, he was saying, this is how I did this shot. This is how I did that shot. This is how I did this shot. This is how I did that set design. And those are all amazing and spectacular, and I want to hear about it. But I wanted to hear about the other stuff too. I wanted the movie to reclaim him as a director who tells great stories with his movies and makes great character pieces. And I will talk about this on the show, I'm sure, but I really wanted him to get more in depth on all the stuff that people have said about his movie's depiction of gender and sexuality, which have, of course, been criticized a lot, and I have a lot to say about it, which we'll talk about throughout the movie. But, he's probably so sick of defending himself that he basically just, laughs it off in 2 minutes, and then that's it. But I'm like, no, I don't want you to have to defend yourself, but I want you to speak about your thoughts about these things. I want someone to give him a venue where he can talk about the gender and sexuality in his movies without having to defend it, without having to get on the defensive. And I feel like nobody ever does. So it was good. You should totally see it, but it left stuff to be desired for me.
I have a feeling that you would be great doing that interview, but I think it would have to be funded by the French. I think they would allow you to go to those places, whereas an American documentary, not so much.
That would be amazing. If only I spoke French. Oh, but Brian De Palma doesn't speak French, so I don't need to speak French. It'll be subtitles. Let's get on that.
Yeah, let's arrange a meeting in Paris.
We can both do it together.
Sure. All right. I'm going to do a few top fives. I reached out to some buddies, some pals of ours, and to hear what they think of Brian De Palma and their top five Brian De Palma movies. Daniel Archer, his number 5 is Sisters. His number 4 is Phantom of the Paradise. His number 3 is The Fury. His number 2 is Body Double. And his number 1 is Carrie. Thank you, Daniel. Scott Pliskins, number 5 is Carlito's Way. Number 4 is Carrie. Number 3 is The Fury. Number 2 is Scarface. And number 1 is Blowout. Cameron Perry, his number 5 is Raising Cain. His number 4 is Carrie. His number 3 is Body Double. His number 2 is Blowout. And his number 1 is Dressed to Kill, with honorable mention going to Femme Fatale. And Dave Felter, he listed 5 titles: The Fury, Blowout, Scarface, Body Double, and The Untouchables. One more list, Warren Money. His number 5 is Body Double, number 4 is Carrie, 3 is The Untouchables, number 2 is Dressed to Kill, and number 1 is Blowout. And that gives you guys a sense of what people think of Brian De Palma's films. And there's a lot of good films to choose from, so we had tough times, I'm sure, narrowing it down to 5. But here is the trailer for your number 5.
That eerie sensation that you've seen a stranger before. Everyone's experienced it. Call it déjà vu. This man calls it terror. Master filmmaker Brian De Palma now creates Obsession. Michael Cortland has denied a nightmare for 16 years. Now that nightmare will have its revenge.
What was she like?
Elizabeth. She was very much like you.
How did she die?
I killed her.
Cliff Robertson. Jean-Pierre Bougeot.
I am Elizabeth. I came to give you a second chance to prove your love.
An act of love in its ultimate state becomes the ultimate in suspense. Obsession.
It took me a really long time to see Obsession because none of my video stores had it when I was a kid. Then it wasn't on DVD for a really long time and blah, blah, blah. So I finally got a hold of it when Arrow released the Blu-ray. And I always kind of heard that it was sort of one of his like lesser movies. Like it was, I don't know, just like, well, of course, it was just a ripoff of Vertigo, which whenever I hear anyone say that about a De Palma movie, I'm like, okay, I hate you, and I don't believe you. But I don't know. I always just kind of heard it was meh. And this is a movie that when I saw it, like I thought about it for days. Like I was kind of obsessed with it, and I was like, "This is like if I were ever to make a movie, I would want it to be exactly like Obsession." And in some ways, I think it really exemplifies how I love what he does with Alfred Hitchcock tropes, even more than a movie that I love a lot, like Body Double or whatever. I mean, he kind of takes this basic plot of Vertigo of being kind of obsessed, of two people obsessed with each other because they have this kind of crazy traumatic connection that they don't exactly know that they have the connection, and just takes it to a totally insane new level by making the connection that this is going to be filled with spoilers. This podcast, there's no way to get around it, but that Cliff Gorman and Xavier Bujold are actually father and daughter, even though he's like in love with her because she looks just like his wife who died. I mean, it's the best. It is the best twist, and it's so ballsy to be the kind of statement that I really shouldn't even be allowed to. This is the thing. I feel like I should not be allowed to speak about Brian De Palma because I can't say what I really think about him in his movies without revealing how fucked up I am. I know. I realized watching the Blu-ray extras that there was some controversy because that allegedly, like, the censors made it so that Cliff Gorman didn't actually have sex with his daughter in the movie. It only happened in a dream sequence. But I was like, okay, bullshit. Like, I thought that watching that whole movie, he's having sex with his daughter. And I was like, and it totally makes sense. I mean, this is like when the daughter has traumatically lost her father, that she would be attracted to this person. It's just like so perverse, but it's somehow so intuitively right about the way that people create fetishes. And then he kind of goes in this really, in this, and in a direction that I think is a lot more emotionally intense than the narrative in Vertigo, which is that he fell in love with a woman's image. She died. He let her. He meets another woman who looks exactly like her, but has to create her again in the image. I mean, it's fascinating and it's brilliant, and it says so much interesting stuff about what is the nature of attraction and what is the nature of love. But in a way, it's more cynical than obsession. I mean, these people, they're not just responding to appearances. They're responding to these deep emotional lacks within themselves. And now that I'm like just talking about nothing but like perverse sexuality and like my armchair psychoanalysis, it's also great mystery. It's unpredictable. It kept me guessing the whole time. It's so amazing just to luxuriate in the gorgeous Venetian. No, it's not Venice. Where does it take place? Rome? I
think it's Rome or Florence. I think maybe
Florence, whatever the Italian setting.
Florence, yeah.
And the beautiful. This is the first. The opening scenes take place in Savannah, somewhere in Georgia, right?
New Orleans, yeah.
New Orleans, right? Oh, it's so gorgeous and lush. The scope cinematography. I mean, it's interesting because in some ways it feels more. Was this before or after Carrie?
It was Carrie, or I think it was this first and then Carrie. Could be wrong.
I think they actually might have both come out in 1976. I don't know how
they both did. Yeah.
But it feels almost more like a big Hollywood-y movie than Carrie does, and that's not to say it's better than Carrie, but it brings with it a whole different set of pleasures. One of the things that's interesting, the De Palma documentary, and he also talks about this on the Blu-ray, is that he like hated Cliff Gorman, and Cliff Gorman. It was Cliff Gorman was the guy, right?
Cliff Robertson. Yeah.
Cliff Robertson. I always think. Cliff Gorman was an unmarried woman. They both kind of look the same too, actually. Well, anyway. He hated him, and I guess it was hard to get him to act, and he was always wearing like orange makeup. But it's funny, I thought he was pretty good in the movie, and I had a total crush on him. Like, it never occurred to me that like he was orange and that he was acting wooden. So I had no problems there. I think Geneviève Bujold gives one of the most underrated performances of the 70s probably in this movie. I mean, so good. So I adore it. I think it's a De Palma movie that everybody should be worshiping and celebrating even more than they do. What are your thoughts on this?
I really need to drink some scotch after watching this movie.
Or like listening to me blather on about it for the last.
No, just the plot, which can be not convoluted, but it just definitely goes to some dark places.
Yes,
to say the least. So definitely need some scotch right now. But I have similar feelings on the movie. I didn't love the film. I don't love the film as much as you because I feel like it's not as exciting. I mean, not all of De Palma's movies should be exciting, but I feel like it maybe lacks a little bit of some of that excitement for me. But I do like the mystery aspect of the movie. I think most of the actors are good. I'm not as enamored with Cliff Robertson. I think he is a bit wooded in the movie, and I could kind of see like him being a problem on the set. He's not the kind of person you would see or typically point as a De Palma actor. So I had a little bit of problem, but I think she is amazing. Geneviève Bujold, I love her in everything. But I think she's especially good in this movie and pulling off those two roles. And I just love seeing her on the screen. And you had other actors. Who else was it? John Lithgow's in it, right? And he had I remember him having a southern accent, and I like when he does stuff like that. I just love anytime John Lithgow's on the screen. My eyes are glued to him.
Totally.
The Vilmos Zsigmond cinematography is really good, but it's also a bit filtery, a little too filtery looking, maybe.
It's over the top. That turned me off the first time I saw it.
This is also one of the De Palma movies I have watched the least, probably. I think Wise Guys and maybe Obsession and some of his later ones like Redacted and so on. I've watched those the least. So I'm not as familiar, especially with his thrillers. It's probably the least familiar with Obsession. But I do appreciate the places it goes. I mean, as dark as they are, Paul Schrader wrote the screenplay. You can kind of tell that, Paul Schrader has no fear in going to those places. Yeah,
he's the biggest pervert of them all.
Exactly. But they crafted a good mystery and definitely De Palma with his style. He's really in command here, and obviously with the movie that came right after this, he takes that style to a new next level. But I just like that I just like what he did here, and I like some of the locales like Florence and the score by Bernard Herrmann I think is pretty good. I mean, you can never go wrong with...
Did Bernard Herrmann do the score, or was it Pino Donaggio?
This was a Bernard Herrmann score.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny because it really sounds like a Pino Donaggio score.
I'm not sure.
But you could say, I guess, that every Pino Donaggio score sounds like a Bernard Herrmann score.
Possibly, yeah. I wonder if he was trying to hold back a little bit from being too Hitchcocky, maybe, with the music, but it doesn't remind me of Hitchcock as much, this movie, even though I know it's supposed to be Vertigo, but it just feels more like a De Palma movie to me.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Score or the movie in general?
Just the score and the movie. I think the movie definitely has more of a De Palma stamp on it than a Hitchcock. Now, Hitchcock. I mean, De Palma, often accused as the person who's ripping off a Hitchcock, but he's taking his defense has always been that he's taking Hitchcock's ideas, which Hitchcock obviously created a lot of these ideas in films, but he's taking them to places that Hitchcock wasn't allowed to go to in his movies. Like, obviously, a movie about with these themes. I mean, Hitchcock hinted at some of these themes in some of his movies, but he never could take it this far. And so, obviously, Brian De Palma, making films in the 70s and beyond, he was allowed to go to those places and take those risks. And some would say to his detriment, because studios didn't like that. And he took them beyond what a mass audience would possibly want to see in a movie in a theater. But this is a movie that came out in August of '76, and now think of it as a summer movie. Like, you wouldn't think Obsession is like the summer movie to go see, right?
No.
And he's done this quite a few times in his career. We'll talk about a movie later on that was also a summer movie that's does not seem like the typical summer studio film, but I just admire him greatly for making a movie like Obsession, and I think he really is kind of honing his skills. Even if I have some problems with it stylistically, with the filtery look, but I still think it's a solid film. Anyway, I still have to watch it again. I need it on Blu-ray. I don't have it on Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's really nice. The transfer is really beautiful.
Because I remember the Sony, I think it was a Columbia, maybe a DVD. Can't remember now, but didn't look as great as it could have. So maybe a Blu-ray will help me open my eyes.
Maybe you'll feel you like it better, because I actually even the filtering, I kind of like it because it lends like a very weird, dreamy quality to the whole thing. But I could see how on a DVD that might, I could see how you wouldn't like it anyway. But especially on a DVD, I could see it looking kind of just like a mess. It
didn't hold my attention as much as I thought it would because of that. I mean, it maybe took me out of it a little bit because it was maybe too filtery and the transfer wasn't so great.
Yeah,
it was a little bit sharper. Maybe I feel like my eyes would go to it more. But that could also be because we're so spoiled now with HD transfers and everything that we watch. That
oh my god, it's so bad. It's really I've become so spoiled. I see every imperfection now when I watch a DVD, and I'm like, get over yourself.
I know. So of your list, this is probably my least favorite, but I know I also have one too that you have. So it's interesting. We both have one, but we love his movies regardless. Here is the trailer for my number 5.
Raising Cain is a breathless ride, a head-spinning, mind-bending, maniacal thriller. A shocker, says People magazine. Director Brian De Palma at last has his Psycho. Raising Cain, rated R, starts tomorrow.
Okay, that's the trailer for Raising Cain. Now, this came out in another August summer movie release. A quite bizarre one, but I think it worked to its... somehow it worked to its advantage coming out in August. A lot of... Back then, August was known as like the dumping ground or the dog days of summer for movies. So studios would often dump like things in August just to get rid of them because they weren't big enough to be like summer blockbusters in June and July. So Universal released this in August of '92, and it worked out because it made like over $20 million domestically, and De Palma wasn't exactly churning out hits by this point in his career, and it did pretty well overseas as well, so it definitely made its money back at a profit. And also, De Palma hadn't made a thriller in a long time since this movie. He was doing other things, like action-y things, and exploring different kinds of genres. So it was nice getting De Palma back in the thriller. So De Palma, thriller, summer... I was totally there. I was there on opening day, first show, and I just love it. I just loved it when I saw it. I just laughed my ass off when I saw this movie. I'm like, I didn't expect it to be so funny. I liked John Lithgow, and I thought John Lithgow was pretty great in what I saw, but I really wasn't expecting John Lithgow to be like full-on John Lithgow. Like, you get so much John Lithgow for your money in this movie. He's playing several characters, and he's having a ball, obviously, playing these roles. And what you get a sense from this movie is that you're getting an actor, a lead actor, and a director just like completely just having fun. Yes. And I love that. I love when the vibe is so freewheeling and fun, but also very controlled. And De Palma's making his thriller, and he's having fun, playing with the narrative, playing with like the structure, doing dream sequences, and doing the erotic thriller thing that he does, and like riffing on like Psycho and Peeping Tom and all the movies that he loved growing up. And he could just shine through. He's just having so much fun playing and doing this movie. And I think people didn't know what to make of it when it came out, and even though it did pretty well, I think the general response was like, "What is this movie? What is going on in this movie? I don't understand it." But if you want a full-on De Palma fest, but a playful one, I think you have seek no further and watch Raising Cain. I think you'll have a blast watching this movie. I love the tracking shots. I love that he's just having fun with the camera and also with the story. And you're not going to find like a lot of big stars in this movie. Lolita Davidovich and Stephen Bauer, I think, are the leads, other than John Lithgow. But I think the performers are good, and they do their job. But really, the star of this movie is John Lithgow and his many characters and is the fun, the capital F-U-N in this movie. I can't wait for this movie to be out on Blu-ray. I'm so excited that Scream Factory, I think, is releasing this, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's ripe for rediscovery. I think it's ripe for people to say, okay, he's just goofing around here, and he's having a ball with it. He's not taking it too seriously. And I like when a movie, like a thriller especially, just doesn't take it completely serious, but at the same time also pays respect to the genre that they're in. So I applaud you, De Palma, for making this movie, because it's one of my I feel like one of the most watchable movies of his, and I could watch it over and over and just have a ball with it. Plus Gabriel Carteris from 90210 is in it. Which is
in like the most random role.
So random. Like, could have been anybody, but he's like, he saw 90210, he's like, get her.
I wish he had done a movie where she was like the lead, or like the Nancy Allen character.
That would have been amazing. What do you think of this movie?
I had never seen it until I watched it for this podcast. I don't know why. It just always escaped me. And it's like a fucking hidden gem. Like, when I was watching this, I was like, oh my God, I have not seen for my entire life one of the great Brian De Palma thrillers. And it's totally a hoot. Like, it's totally, like, it's like, I love it. It's almost like Stranger Things, except instead of, like, paying homage to every horror movie and sci-fi movie from 75 to 83, he just, like, decided to pay homage to himself for 2 hours. So it's just like over the top, like every crazy, weird Brian De Palma flourish just thrown into a blender of lunacy and joy. And yeah, you totally feel like he's having a blast. And I just love it so much. I don't even know what I can say about it. I know that the movie was drastically recut, I think by the studio. I don't know if it was by the studio or if he opted to himself. Where it was originally, because if you remember, not you, Michael, but audience out there, it starts with like this crazy scene where John Lithgow is like this nice father who like then chloroforms one of the mothers of his kids' playmates in the car, and then like has some crazy exchange with his drunk father who's like, oh, you killed another one or whatever. But then it just randomly goes into this erotic thriller plot with Lolita Davidovich and Stephen Bauer, who he's her ex-husband, and they just have this amazing affair. And then that's like 20 minutes. And then it just goes back to the craziness about John Lithgow. And they do kind of fit together, but in this very bizarre, peripheral, very De Palma-ian way. Mm-hmm. And I guess he said that he would have wanted it to be begin with the erotic thriller with Lolita Davidovich and Stephen Bauer, and then switch over kind of midway into the Lithgow plot. And I actually am really glad. I hear they might be putting the original version on the Blu-ray, which would be amazing.
Interesting, yeah.
But actually there's a re-edited version online that somebody made that kind of does it that way, which is also really interesting. I am really glad it didn't end up being that way, because I think that would have just been, to me, a little bit derivative of Dress to Kill and not as exciting as just having this crazy tangent in the middle of the movie, which I loved so much and I was just so happy with after this amazing. And I mean, the opening scenes with John Lithgow are amazing, and they just grab you so much, and then it just totally goes off in another direction. I love it so much. It makes me so happy. I think Stephen Bauer, he's like such a cheesy 90s hunk, but to me he's like the hottest person in the entire world, and I love that he's like wearing a suit and a trench coat, like a three-piece suit and a trench coat, like in every scene, even though it's like just like come to town to find his ex-wife and he's like not there on business, but like no matter what, he's wearing a three-piece suit and a trench coat. It's just so weird and so good. This I am like a little slobbering for this to come out on Blu-ray, so I can like, because you know all these other movies we're talking about I've seen 2,000 times, so like I have a lot of catching up to do with this one. Oh, and I love that. Is it Frances Sternhagen who plays like the crazy?
Yes.
Like, oh my God, it's too good. Like we don't deserve it.
Her wig.
Amazing. Crazy brown wig, yes. Oh my God, it's such a treat. I love it. So yeah, if you haven't seen this one, walk, don't run, or run, don't walk. I'm so tired. I'm like out of it, but so good.
Steven, since you mentioned Stephen Bauer and his very 80s awesomeness, have you seen Thief of Hearts from 84?
That is so funny. Did he play the guy in Thief of Hearts?
Yes, he was the lead in that.
I always used to say that guy was like my dream man, and everybody like, he's so cheesy, you're such a dork. So obviously, like Stephen Bauer really is the man who I'm supposed to be with, other than my son. That's good to know.
Yeah, love that movie.
Wasn't he Thief of Hearts like 1984? Like it doesn't seem like he aged between those two movies.
Oh, yeah, he looks pretty much the same, yeah. And then he was in another De Palma movie, which we're going to discuss a little bit later. But yeah, he's awesome. I like him in the 80s. He was great, and in the 90s, early 90s here. But yeah, it's a fun movie. You guys got to see it. And I like that it was conceived because while De Palma was doing Bonfire of the Vanities, which we both like and will defend, while he was doing that, he wanted to make a thriller on a playground. That was his idea. And then it eventually became Raising Cane's. So I like that's where it comes from. I want to do a thriller on a playground.
And then and it'll just happen to involve like crazy drag and like every other madness known to man. But the most important part is the playground.
All right, here is Stephen Bauer in your number 4.
Every day he survived was a triumph. Scarface, the will, the power, the passion. Al Pacino is Scarface. He loved the American dream with a vengeance. Rated R. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere.
It's so funny until you just said that, Stephen Bauer is in another De Palma movie that we're going to be talking about. I was like, which one is that? And I was like, wait a minute, was he Manny in Scarface? And again, I didn't know it was him, but I like have such a crush on that character. What is it about this actor who looks the same in every movie? And yet I can never make the connection that he's the guy that I had a big crush on like every other movie. Okay, so Scarface, another movie that I did not come to until late in life. And this is why. This movie has such a tremendous cultural impact. It has such a reputation. It is just like all over the fucking place. And I think of I grew up thinking of Scarface and thinking of like douchey straight men with posters in their dorm rooms, or like rap artists who I wasn't interested in. I like some rap, but like woman rap. I like man rap now more than I did then, but growing up I had no interest. And I just sort of assumed, and I should never have assumed this because Brian De Palma would never do this to me, but I always just assumed that it was like a lot of yelling and histrionics and constant guns. Like I thought it was like I thought it was a contemporary action movie. It was just like nothing but people shooting each other and yelling at each other and Al Pacino being crazy all day and night. But finally, I was going through a De Palma renaissance recently, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, Scarface is one of his most iconic movies. You just got to see it. And I watched it on Netflix, and my mind was blown. I fell so hard in love with this movie. I saw it for the first time probably like 4 or 5 months ago. I've since seen it like 5 times, including once in the theater. They played it at the theater here. I was so excited, and I just loved it even more. Where do I begin? First of all, I'm obsessed with 80s Miami aesthetics. This is not new. Like, this has always been. My grandparents lived in Fort Lauderdale when I was growing up, and that was the 80s and early 90s. So to me, it was paradise, because we'd go visit them, and every day we'd just go to the mall. And let me tell you, in the 80s and 90s, everywhere you went in Fort Lauderdale, there were used VHS tapes everywhere, like just piles and like VHS tapes of things that are like worth a lot of money now, like Caged Heat and whatever. There's just so many used VHS tapes. That's all we do. We'd shop and go to the pool and eat at the food court, and it's like sounds like it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it was, trust me. And I just loved the look. I loved it when you got into the Fort Lauderdale airport. All the lights were pink, and it was just. I still want to move to Florida. It's like my dream. And then, I've always been obsessed with the Golden Girls, which was also very much that 80s Miami aesthetic. So just to be immersed in it, but in this epic way. I mean, oh my God, this is what I love about Brian De Palma. I mean, many things, but is there anybody else who could just make gaudy, trashy aesthetics so gorgeous and like bring it to like a level of profundity? Like you're looking at all this tacky nouveau riche Miami decor, and it just looks like poetry. Like, I can't even describe it. He just makes trashy shit so fucking epic and beautiful. I can't describe it, but I love it. And I was surprised at what a great screenplay it is. And I know that like Oliver Stone was writing good screenplays in the 80s, so maybe it shouldn't have been such a surprise, but such great dialogue, such great scenes. I had a friend who once said that Scarface is like Mommy Dearest for straight men. And that's really true. Like, I totally get the same intoxication from Al Pacino's anti-hero histrionics as I do from watching Faye Dunaway go crazy in Mommy Dearest. I find it very cathartic. Mary, Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and Michelle Pfeiffer are talk about epic. I mean, just their hair, their look, their way of being. Mary Stuart Mastrantonio's like breakdowns and screaming, and oh my god, I couldn't deal with it. The scene in the nightclub where she's dancing in that amazing sequin jumper as she's on fire. Every scene in the nightclub. I mean, when that first nightclub scene happened, and Michelle Pfeiffer and Al Pacino were angry dancing, I think one of our friends, our retro movie love friends, called it. I was just like, this is my favorite movie ever, and I've never seen it. I'm going to die. Like, I have to watch it forever. I could listen to Giorgio Moroder's score. When I went to see it in the theater, I was like, I could just close my eyes and listen to this score, and it would tell me the entire story of the movie. It makes me so happy. I just want to cry forever. I love it so much. So this is, just the tops for me. And I know you don't quite feel that way, so I'm interested to hear your version.
No, I don't dislike this movie. I just it's funny because you came to this movie with a perception of it because of how it influenced the culture, and so you thought you wouldn't be as interested in it. I grew up with those guys who were into the Scarface and the Italian Americans who worshipped Scarface and The Godfather. So because of that, because of how those guys were, I just kind of was turned off to those movies. Like, I was not into The Godfather at all as a kid, or Scarface, or any of those movies. So I just did not appreciate them growing up. So I kind of came to Scarface with more appreciation later in life. I think when it came out on DVD, initially came out on DVD, I watched it. I'm like, oh, this is definitely a good film, and it's definitely a well-made movie by Brian De Palma, and taking the Howard Hawks film and just making it his own thing, and just making it larger than life, like literally larger. It's like how long is this movie? Like 3 hours. It's pretty epic. And I like Al Pacino. I think he's a great actor. It does go over the top, and I have to be in the mood to watch that. I just said sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm not in a Scarface mood, and I just can't find myself wanting to watch this movie. But when I am in the mood for that larger than life story of this Cuban immigrant who wants to make it big in America, I'll put on a movie like Scarface, and I tend to go to Carlito's Way, which we didn't pick today, but I do really love Carlito's Way. And I feel like Pacino's performance in there is definitely more nuanced and subtle, and as the character dictates. I mean, Montana's a different guy from Carlito, but I just appreciate some of that more in that movie, and I feel like that movie is pretty underrated. Scarface definitely has its place in the culture, and I appreciate that, and I do watch it from time to time. I rewatched it a few weeks ago when we were preparing for this podcast. And I found myself really digging it, and really digging the score, especially. Moroder's music is amazing in this movie. I kind of wish Michelle Pfeiffer had more to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it was early in her career, so right after Grease 2. So clearly De Palma saw Grease 2 and was like, get me her. But she's amazing in Grease 2, so I can see that. But I really wish she had a stronger character like she did in Grease 2. And she does kind of have to hold her own against Tony, and that's what part of Tony's attraction to her. And I think I like the love story most of all. Sometimes the stuff with the sister is a bit much, but I appreciated that about it. It definitely goes to some like possibly dark places, like incestuous things maybe. Ideas, floating those ideas around. It doesn't quite do it as like obsession, but
right. It's there.
It's there. It's permeating. There's definitely an Oliver Stone kind of like playing with those ideas in a screenplay, and I appreciate that about it, and that it goes to those places. I like Stephen Bauer. I think he's really good, and Robert Loggia is great. I do wish the movie had more actual Cubans in it. Like nobody.
Oh my god, so offensive and bad. I know, I should have said that.
like nobody in the movie. I think Stephen Bauer is Cuban or part Cuban, so he gets a pass, but no one else in the movie is, and so it's kind of like the story of an immigrant and then not actually having any of them in the movie. Just kind of is a little bit, I guess of the time. There weren't a lot of Hollywood wasn't making a lot of movies about people of color. and actually using people of color.
Right.
So Hollywood has a long history of that. So way before Scarface came around. But I wished it was a bit more like that. Maybe made today it would be more like that. But I do admire the movie, and I like it. And but when going for that kind of the gangster movie, I will go to Carlito's Way. Just like for some reason, I just will just go to that one immediately. But I can see why you really enjoyed it. I love the Miami-ness of the movie. I think and all the club sequences I think are great. I love all the dancing. I love all the outfits. Man, like De Palma's movies, he hires the best costumers in his movies. Like they're impeccable. They're so telling of their time. He's not afraid to do. He's done a couple of period movies, but he's not afraid to do very contemporary movies and just say this is 1983 and deal with it, right? Just having fun with it, and I love that about him, and I love that about the movie too. So, thank you for picking it. All right, and here is the trailer for my number 4.
For lovers of the shocking, the suspenseful, and the terrifying, a new classic, The Fury.
Where's Robin now, Gillian?
The girl's taking my place after you poisoned me!
20th Century Fox presents a Frank Yablans presentation. A Brian De Palma film, The Fury, an experience in terror and suspense. Rated R. See The Fury, now playing at a theater near you.
Okay, that's The Fury, released in 1978. His second telekinesis-driven film by De Palma. I think, again, another underrated De Palma movie. I feel like The Fury is kind of forgotten. I love Amy Irving in this movie. I love all the actors in this movie. Kirk Douglas is great in this movie. Carrie Snodgrass is in this movie. If you haven't seen this one, I feel like it fits really well in De Palma's canon. It's based on a source novel by John Farris, and he's adapted the screenplay, and De Palma just has fun with it. He's making his another movie revolving around telekinesis, but he's doing it in a kind of a different way. I love that I love that John Cassavetes is playing the bad guy in a movie. I think John Cassavetes was great at playing bad guys, and I feel like he does it really well here. And I like that he's using these kids to do his dirty work, and these poor kids who have these abilities. And I just haven't seen it in a long time, so I'm trying to remember some things about it. I remember that Bernard Herrmann's score, or rather John Williams was doing kind of like a Bernard Herrmann kind of score in it. And I like that about it. I like that John Williams is trying to do that, but in his own John Williams kind of way. I mentioned Carrie Snodgrass and her performance. I like that she was paired with Kirk Douglas, who was a lot older, I feel like, at the time. But he was, playing the barrel-chested lover boy and hero of the story. But she hadn't.
And he was totally hot. I mean, whatever. He was 8 at that time.
Exactly. She hadn't done a theatrical movie in a long time, something like 8 years. So De Palma had worked with another actress who hadn't done a movie in a long time. So he's pretty good at bringing actresses out for these roles. And I ultimately find her performance, much like in The Attic, kind of it goes to some tragic places. I always thought she was great at pulling off those roles, and something about her is immediately likable, and I was rooting for her. And there's some great set pieces in the movie, especially one with her involving her and her possible demise, going to spoiler territory, and of course the ending, which if people have seen The Fury will immediately remember. It's a very explosive ending.
Yes.
Which I loved, and effects were done by pretty great people like Rick Baker and Rob Bottin. So you get a pretty great explosion at the end of the movie that's unlike I've ever seen in any other movies, until the CGI era came along and people had to make things bigger than life, and but unrealistically to me. I just enjoy practical effects so much, and there's some great effects in this movie. I like that it's a thriller with effects, and I love the idea of someone with powers and using those powers possibly for evil, but also the innocent who has to kind of find her way and to fight the bad guy. I love that. I love those kinds of stories. I did an article about girls with powers in movies, and one of my favorites was that came up was The Fury, and I just wish there were more like them. I like that it doesn't have a downbeat ending as some other movies that revolve around characters with telekinesis, and we might get to one later. But it makes a nice companion piece with that movie, and I really respect it. What are your thoughts?
It's an interesting moment to be discussing The Fury, because Stranger Things is in some ways more profoundly indebted to The Fury than even like Close Encounters and E.T., and nobody's talking about it. Like none of the, I mean, maybe some people are, but none of the reviews I've been like, yeah, they're totally ripping off The Fury, but I mean, they really, really are. But it's doing it really well. Sometimes I think The Fury is like actually my favorite movie ever made. Like I just, whenever I watch it, I'm like, there is no better movie than this. Like even, it's like crazy. The minute it starts, and it's just black screen with white plain credits with the amazing Howard Shore score. And you see the cast, and it's like Kirk Douglas, John Cassavetes, Amy Irving, Andrew Stevens, Carrie Snodgrass. And your just head is appropriately exploding because you're like, this is the best cast ever. And then every shot of this movie is just so beautiful and so 70s at the same time. There are so many priceless moments, like Amy Irving with her crazy glasses, like in her all-girls boarding school, you know, using her telekinesis to flip a train over, and then getting revenge on the school bully with her psychic knowledge of her pregnancy. Yeah, it's so great, and I just so much. I just love it. There's just De Palma's visual sense in this movie is so interesting. I love the scene where Amy Irving is in the house, the laboratory or the institute, and she suddenly has her vision of what happened to Andrew Stevens' character there, and she's kind of like bathed in a white light, and like the background changes so that she's in the present and the past at the same time, and it's really just intoxicating, and you just never see any. I don't know, it's unlike anything else I've ever seen. I think that this is another perfect example of a movie, and this was kind of like Brian De Palma's epic. You know, this was kind of like his Star Wars, you know. It was like...
Totally, yeah. I can totally see it. You know,
he made Carrie, and 20th Century Fox was like, we're just going to give you all the money you want to make this crazy epic movie about telekinesis, and it's going to be like an action movie, but it's also going to be a thriller. And yet it has so much heart, and it's such a human tragedy. You feel so badly for this girl who's discovering she has these powers, and it has this incredible empathy for this boy who's being put in these horrible situations. And it does everything that Stranger Things does now, which is tell a profoundly human story with crazy ass pyrotechnics everywhere and the amazing cinematography. And I'm proud to say, when I taught Intro to Film Style for their midterm exam, the question on cinematography, I just had them watch Carrie Snodgrass's death scene, and I was like right about the cinematography in this scene. I was like, that proved to you that you know all of the different cinematography terminology, because Brian De Palma uses all of it in this scene. I love that Amy Irving gets to be like the star, or the main, you know, basically like she is. She basically gets to be like the final girl, and she totally pulls it off. It's nice to see her as the lead in a kind of sci-fi horror thriller. It's just my favorite. I just love it so much. And if you're going to watch it for the first time, or you haven't watched it in a long time, you must get the Arrow Blu-ray, because the transfer changed my life. It's one of maybe like the top 5 revolutionary transfers that I have seen.
I have the Twilight Time, I feel like, that released it. Or Fox. I think it was Twilight Time. And I think the transfer was pretty good in that. I don't know if Arrow does a better job or not, but I'll have to investigate that further. But I remember the transfer being really good. It's just one of those movies that I kind of get lost in. I know people have their Harry Potters and their other kind of like. I just kind of wish this was like a Harry Potter series, like in a way, like the adventures of these girls with power, or kids with powers, and in the school, and just like being used by government or whoever's chasing them down, or the kind of X-Men like in a way. So I could definitely see the parallels that you drew to Stranger Things. I actually felt very similar things when I was watching. I'm like, oh, because we were thinking about De Palma so much lately. Like, oh yeah, like The Fury. But I guess I'm not quite saying that as much as the other films and like Spielbergian films or other films of the time. But I have a feeling the filmmakers did see The Fury and did draw on it a little bit.
Oh yeah, they knew it. They knew exactly what they were doing. They would, if somebody asked them, I'm sure they would give it credit.
It's also the writer John Ferris, who I mentioned. It was based on his book. He also wrote and directed a movie called Dear Dead Delilah, which I really liked from the 70s. It was a horror movie with Agnes Moorehead. I think you would like that one. You should check it out.
Have you read the book, The Fury?
I haven't read the book, no. I want to, though. I should.
Me too, because everyone's on Amazon or whatever. They're like, oh, the movie's not as good. And I'm like, well, let's just see about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you mentioned the Star Wars kind of thing, because the editor of this movie, Paul Hirsch, who's a longtime editor. He's done most of Brian De Palma's movies. He also served as an editor on the two great Star Wars movies, episodes 4 and 5, New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. He didn't do the lesser Return of the Jedi, but
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
So he lends some of his Star Wars. He already had a Star Wars movie under his belt. Made this one. There's also great actors in there, like Daryl Hannah's in there, Laura Innes from ER. I saw her in there. I'm like, oh, from ER, I remember her.
No, I totally didn't.
Dennis Franz, of course, who's in a lot of Brian De Palma movies. Melody Thomas, who's in a bunch of 80s things. William Finley, who's a long time player and one of De Palma's players. Ratanya Alda, who's in
Ratanya Alda, of course.
So many great things. She's there. Fiona Lewis. Playing evil, Charles Durning. I like that Charles Durning was there because he's like such a likable guy, and you kind of was questioning, do I like this guy? What is this guy up to? Like,
yes,
I like that about like that he cast him there because you're kind of questioning yourself all the time. But yeah, great movie. I really like this one. I feel like yeah, it's definitely one of his best movies. All right, that was The Fury, and before we get into our number 3s, I'm going to read off some titles, and here they are. James Bench, he wrote in, his number 5 is Carrie, his number 4 is Sisters, his number 3 is Dressed to Kill, his number 2 is Blowout, and his number 1 is Body Double. Jeff Nelson of Scream Factory, he wrote in, his number 5 is Blowout, his number 4 is Body Double. His number 3 is The Fury. And he wrote, which never gets the love it deserves. Obviously, we agree. Number 2 is Dressed to Kill. And his number 1 is Carrie, which he gets the chance to release under his label, which is awesome. And we can't wait for that. Amanda Reyes, she runs the Made for TV Mayhem blog and podcast. In no particular order. Body Double, Carrie, Blowout, Dressed to Kill, and I'll throw in Hi Mom to be all controversial, and mostly for the Be Black Baby segment, which haunted me. Also, my husband would be mad if I didn't mention Phantom of the Paradise. And did he really direct Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark? I rung up De Palma once at a bookstore I worked in LA. I kept thinking, I recognize this guy. Then he handed me his credit card, and I started giggling. He was nice. I kept thinking that his house probably looked like the revolving one in Body Double. I wondered where he kept his bookcase. Sorry, that's the only De Palma story I have. I have a similar De Palma story, too, because I think I'm sure I mentioned it on the podcast before, that I rung up Brian De Palma at Kim's Video. He was buying one of his own movies, Hi Mom.
I love that. At
Kim's Video. And I could sense that he was being really nostalgic. He was feeling really nostalgic when he was buying it. It was the first time it was being released on VHS, and it was actually filmed in that neighborhood, right across the street, at the towers there near Bleecker Street in LaGuardia. So he was probably feeling like some great nostalgia filming that movie, getting to buy it at a video store. And I talked to him briefly, and he was very nice. And I'm sure I gushed over Carrie and with him, and that was a nice little conversation. But I got to meet him, which was nice. Declan Gallagher, his number 5 is Body Double. His number 4 is Femme Fatale. His number 3 is Carrie. His number 2 is Sisters. And his number 1 is Dressed to Kill. And Annette C. Sowell, who showed up at a Retro Movie Love podcast barbecue. Thank you for coming, Annette. Her number 5 is Carrie. Her number 4 is The Fury. Her number 3 is Dressed to Kill. Her number 2 is Blowout. And her number 1 is Body Double. And before we get into our number 3s, we're going to take a little break, and a little musical break. So enjoy this. We'll be back. And we're back. I hope you enjoyed that. And here is a trailer for Ben's number 3.
He thought he was watching her, but she was watching him. He thought he was trespassing, but he was invited. He saw exactly what she wanted him to see, and what he saw was murder. Brian De Palma, Body Double. You can't believe everything you see. Rated R. Coming soon to a theater near you.
Body Double is another one that I came to. Well, I didn't come to it late in life, but I didn't start to appreciate it until later in life. I first saw it probably in my first major De Palma obsession, which was when I was in like 7th grade. So, you know, a while back. I had always seen and loved Carrie. I saw Carrie when I was very young and taped it off of HBO and watched it a million times. Although that wasn't the first time I saw it. The first time, whatever. We'll talk about Carrie later, maybe. But but in seventh grade, I was kind of really starting to explore directors, and I started watching Carrie over and over again. I was really identifying with it because of my, shitty childhood, like every single man and woman I know, basically. And I was like, okay, I got to see all of this director's other movies. So, first I saw Dressed to Kill, which was life-changing, and then I saw The Fury, which was life-changing. And then I rented Body Double. And after that wham, bang, punch of those three movies, Body Double didn't satisfy me as much. It felt like a letdown. And I think a big part of that is that the period when those movies came out, the late 70s to the very early 80s, that has just always been the sweet spot for me. Like, I love nothing more than movies from that period. They are so satisfying to me. So Body Double was very much a glossy mid-80s movie, and that was just not what I wanted at that point. I just wanted endless movies that were like Carrie, The Fury, Dressed to Kill, and Blowout. Oh, Blowout was the other one I saw before I saw Body Double, and was completely obsessed with it. I think that with Body Double, Body Double is a movie that does kind of, to some extent, I don't know if I even agree with this now. I don't agree with this. I was going to say it gets away from the kind of rich characterization that is in all of those other movies. And it does and it doesn't. I mean, the Craig Wasson character is really, really interesting and well-developed, and the Melanie Griffith character is flawless. But I think that something about the kind of beautiful woman who he's following around who gets killed, the kind of emptiness of that character, at that time, it bothered me. It doesn't now, because I was used to like Sissy Spacek and Carrie and Angie Dickinson and Nancy Allen. I mean, Amy Irving, some of the greatest woman characters of the 70s and 80s. And here it was just kind of like there were no women until Melanie Griffith came into it. So anyway, there were all these things I didn't like about it. I think that I didn't love that it took place in L.A. when all the other movies of his that I loved took place, for the most part, on the East Coast. And I love East Coast movies. So there were just all these, it just didn't hit for me. And I remember thinking, and I hated the twist ending. I remember I just thought that it was so stupid. But now, a million years later, after seeing 100,000 other movies, after whatever, falling in and out with De Palma, because I did go through a period where I was like, oh, he's offensive to gay people and trans people and women, and I'm sick of him and his politically incorrect bullshit. I went through a very second wave feminist period with him. But then when I kind of rediscovered him lately and fell in love with him, I was like, okay, I got to see Body Double. And in my film program, Body Double is a movie that's just revered, loved, whatever. The people whose taste I like and I agree with, they just love that movie, and they all say that's their favorite De Palma movie. So I got it on Blu-ray and watched it again, I don't know, a few years ago, a year or two ago. And I fell in love, it's like, who knows, the passage of time, I was obsessed with it, and I've now watched it a million times. I think that now living in LA, that really gives me a new appreciation of it. It's such a great LA movie, and it really just sort of captures the glossy, sordid weirdness of this town. But then also, it's such a great historical document of LA, and it's kind of his descent into the porno video underworld is so just catnip for me. It really makes a great double feature with Videodrome, which I think actually came out, if not the same year. I think Body Double was 85. Was Body Double 84 or 85?
84.
Okay, so Videodrome was 83. So they're very kind of aligned, like the dangerous worlds of urban video culture, which, yes, like, give me more. I think that's my favorite thing about it, actually, just its depiction of LA in the early 80s. It's just so beautifully filmed that I could just kind of luxuriate in that time and place and the way that he shoots it forever and ever and ever. But then of course there is Melanie Griffith, at her performance, which it just like it didn't really hit. I mean, I loved it, but it didn't really. I wasn't like, oh, that's the greatest thing ever at that time. I don't know what I was thinking because she is just so Holly Body is everything, and I love that they make reference to her in Difficult People in the first season of Difficult People. It's so good. Somebody says the gay guy works at a restaurant. And he's like, the light is broken to the owner. And the boss is like, fix it. He's like, I don't know how to fix it. He's like, use a power drill. And he's like, oh, like Body Double? Melanie Griffith is everything in that movie. And I was like, okay, I love this show. But yeah, I really went through an obsession with Melanie Griffith's like pre-working girl, early 80s, like punk Melanie Griffith movies recently. And I just love her so much. So anyway, yeah, now Body Double is one of my favorite movies. It's become a comfort movie to me, which is not really true of De Palma's movies for the most part. I mean, they are comforting and that they're like my favorite movies forever, and they make me so happy to watch them. But like Body Double, I can just watch when I need to relax, and that's not because like I'm a misogynist and I want to watch women be killed by power drills. But there's just something about it that I find very soothing. So I think one of the things that turned me off about it back in the day that I love now is that this is like Raising Cain. Like, this is kind of the first movie where De Palma started paying homage to himself and just being like, haha, like, look at all these things that you hate about my films. I'm just going to do them like 20 times that and like deal with it. And I kind of think it's funny and enjoy just what a Looney Tune he was. And that like a major studio would finance such craziness. So what are your thoughts on Body Double?
Body Double is my second favorite Brian De Palma movie of all time. So I'm glad you picked it. I talked about it on the 1984 podcast. I think it was my number one movie of 1984 because my co-host had mentioned some other movies that I really liked as well. So I love Body Double so much. It's, like you said, too, a comforting movie for me. I could watch it any time and just kind of just fall into the beauty and the power of its 80s-ness. And it's Los Angeles. You know, I would say the Los Angeles of Body Double is part of the reason why I wanted to live in Los Angeles.
Totally.
Of course, that Los Angeles is not around anymore, but I feel like I should stalk some of the locations of this movie because I just love this depiction of LA. I think originally De Palma had wanted to shoot in New York, but then opted for LA. And it's funny because like the switching, 3,000 miles away, he just kind of gets so LA with it, and just works perfectly with the themes of the movie and the pornography that the movie has in it. I know this movie's it's destroyed by some people for its depiction of women and violence and sexuality, but I happen to think it's a pretty feminist movie because Melanie Griffith is amazing in it. I feel like she gives such a strong performance, and she's given all the best lines of the movie.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if she's given the best character, she's given the best lines. I mean, it can't be that anti-woman, right?
She's such a commanding force.
She is, and she was like she had some nominations for this movie, and I feel like well deserved. I feel like even the Oscar she should have gotten for that year. So I absolutely love her, and this is the movie I fell in love with her, and I saw this in the theater. Another great movie to watch when you're 9 years old. This is the opposite of Places in the Heart to me.
It must have blown. Yeah, I bet you didn't fall asleep during this. It must have blown your friggin' mind.
It totally blew my mind. I saw it at Times Square I think it was at the Rivoli Theater, and I just was so in love with it. I'm just like, it's so 80s. It's so like just the heightened sexuality just like really appeals to me, of course, and just the characters and just like what is going on, like the whole music video sequence, like
so
just
good.
like totally blew my mind as a kid. Like, don't know what's going on, but I love it. And that sequence is just brilliant and masterful, and I just gonna watch that sequence over and over. And I like Craig Wasson in the movie. I think he's good. I think he's fun. I think he's more fun to watch than, say, like a James Stewart, like in a similar role, like a Rear Window kind of role.
Yes. Okay.
He's just fun, more fun to watch. It's like the everyman that you can kind of root for. And Greg Henry who's another one of De Palma's players, is in there, possibly playing a villainous role, and I think he's great. I love when Greg Henry shows up. I saw him first in Just Before Dawn. He was one of the campers, one of the head campers in that movie, and he was playing a very different role for him. Like he was playing the weaker man in that one, where the final girl had to kind of take over in that one, which was great. That's a great movie. That's a pure feminist thriller if there ever was one. But I really do like what De Palma does with this one. I think he there's a lot of style in it, but I really do care for its characters, and I think the screenplay is fun and funny. And he, like you said, he's having a ball behind the scenes, much like he did with later on with his Raising Cain, and he just wants to. I think he's just kind of letting loose, and he took a lot of criticism in the early '80s with certain movies, and I think he's just kind of like just giving a big middle finger to all of it. It's like, I'm going to make the movie I want to make, and I'm going to have fun doing it, and it's going to be a studio movie. It's going to be released in theaters, and hopefully you'll enjoy it.
And it's going to be so dirty, and it's going to be such an Alfred Hitchcock ripoff, and it's going to be so hyper stylized, like it's going to be everything that you hate.
Exactly. And it just immediately draws me in, and I can watch it over and over, and I do, and I love it so much. And I think Deborah Shelton in her big glasses, and I love the scenes where he's just being creepy, and Craig Wasson, who those scenes could definitely be like he's just stalking this woman, really.
Totally.
And
no sympathy for him.
And but he's so likable too at the same time. So I just love all that stuff in the movie. And
that scene where they kiss, it is so over the top. It's just like so like tackily romantic that I can't help but be swept away. I guess audiences kind of laughed at it in the theater, but you have to laugh. Like you're almost supposed to. It's good. It's good laugh.
It's just so over the top, and I just kind of want to recreate it under like a little bridge, overpass, whatever that is, and but I'll probably get bugged and and get pretty dizzy while doing it too, with the camera swirling around me. I just love the style of the movie and the music. It's another great Pino Donaggio score. I love it so much. Thank you for picking it. All right, and here is the trailer for my number 3.
From director Brian De Palma, master of the erotic thriller, comes a new suspense sensation.
This top supermodel's wearing more than you'd think. 10 million in diamonds.
This isn't a game tonight. People can die. Remember, no names and no guns.
Go.
The witch double-crossed us. She ran away with the diamonds.
A little under 4 million. Not bad for a night's work, huh?
Where are the diamonds?
It's Johnny.
I know who you are.
You know who Bruce Hewitt Watts is?
The new American ambassador?
Got a wife, but no one seems to have a picture of her.
So you want me to nail her, right?
Nicholas Bardo? Speaking. You took a picture of Mrs. Watts? I don't think you realize who you're dealing with, Mr. Bardo. We know all about you.
I have a past here. It only takes one photo.
Are you flirting with me?
Baby, there's one more thing we gotta do.
She set me up for you guys to get me out of the way.
That's what it's all about. Me disappearing.
2 lives.
The only thing missing is the ambassador's wife.
2 worlds.
Did I make you jealous?
Jealous? Yes.
1 woman.
I'm a bad girl. Real bad.
Femme Fatale.
Okay, that's Femme Fatale. I think this is the only De Palma movie past 92 that ended up on the list. This was released in November of 2002. His later career not as strong as his early career. Happens with a lot of directors. Studios maybe not taking as many chances. Even though this was ultimately released by Warner Brothers, I think he got it financed with foreign money because studios here in America weren't taking as many chances with Brian De Palma, who had a proven track record. He made some pretty big hits, like he made Mission Impossible and The Untouchables, two action movies that I actually really like. And they're not on my list today, but I'll talk about them hopefully another time, maybe in an action movie podcast. I think they're really solid films and really well done. So he's made some big studio efforts. And I think just people were tired of De Palma and his thrillers by this point. So they weren't lining up to give him money. So he had to seek foreign money, and he made Femme Fatale in France and other places. So he was having fun making a thriller again after all these years. It's been a long time for him again, making a thriller. And I really think he's just having a ball, having fun with Hitchcockian things, and doing it with a lot of style and a lot of playfulness. The Bolero sequence at Cannes that opens the movie is just brilliant. I want the whole movie to be that in a way. It's just so well done. Melanie Griffith is not in this movie, so you have Rebecca Romaine Stamos at the time in the lead role, and I think a lot of people. She took a lot of flack for her performance, but I think she holds her own. She's not quite as sharp as Melanie Griffith. She doesn't have that punk rock attitude that Melanie Griffith has. But I think as a De Palma player, she's pretty fun. She's also obviously pretty attractive and sexy, and that fits the role. I think maybe Uma Thurman was originally cast in the role, but had to drop out. I wonder what that would have been. I don't see Uma Thurman quite as sexy as Rebecca Romaine, and I think the role definitely calls for a sexiness. Melanie Griffith did talk De Palma into casting Antonio Banderas, her then husband, into playing the photographer in the movie, and it wasn't as juicy as a part as Banderas is used to playing, but I like what he did with the characters, and you can see Banderas kind of riffing throughout the movie, doing his thing, letting loose. I think De Palma wrote the screenplay for this one, but I don't think he was married to his words, so he let the actors kind of improvise a bit. You can definitely see that with the Banderas character, and there's a lot of fun with him. I actually do like him in the movie a good deal. It's one of those that I think this movie will turn some people off because it does veer towards that only a dream thing. Especially in part of a good chunk of the movie, which happens with I know it happened with Obsession and a few other things, but there are a lot of visual clues in the movie to let you know what's going on. And what I really dug about this movie when it came out was that De Palma was using the camera and using the frame to tell the story, and just having a lot of fun doing that. And I just love the cinematography. I love the music. And I just had a ball. I just got De Palma's back making a thriller, and I was really happy. And Greg Henry's in it. I know you're not as in love with this movie, but I do want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, this is a movie this is another movie. I guess I'm not a good Brian De Palma fan, because even though I saw all of his movies from like Sisters to Body Double, like when I was going through my early De Palma obsession, I never really cared about anything that came after. I mean, I saw Mission Impossible in the theater. I thought it was good. I liked it at the time. I saw Bonfire of the Vanities when it came out. I couldn't begin to understand it. So but I just kind of neglected all the later work. So I heard about Femme Fatale for years and years and how great it was. And then I rented it. I thought that the first scene at the film festival was great and was vintage De Palma, and you just couldn't do better. It was sexy and dangerous and beautifully shot, and it has that. The great thing about Brian De Palma is that it feels like his relationship with film form is erotic. Like it almost, there's something very, very sexual about just whenever he moves the camera or just a thing with film style. Like it's unique. There's no other filmmaker who you get that from, and that's really present in that opening scene in Femme Fatale, and probably a lot of the scenes in Femme Fatale. But I just got so lost after like 20 minutes. And I just stopped giving a shit. And it just felt like the movie was like 200,000 hours long. And I don't know. It didn't grab me at all. I thought that there were nice scenes. I think that Rebecca Romijn is fine. I don't think that she's bad, at all. She doesn't have that dynamic quality to me that his other actresses have had, but I think that might be because of the script too. I don't think it's just her fault. I don't know. I agree with you. It was obvious that he was just having fun with film form and doing great things with the setting and the camera but it just maybe it was too much for me. Maybe De Palma finally went too far into his own, just doing whatever the fuck he wanted to do. But I just could not bring myself to care. Yeah, I was just bored. So that was really sad. It was the first movie that I've rented of his recently that I just could not get into very much at all.
Interesting. But yeah, I definitely understand it. I know a lot of people had similar problems with it when it came out, and I feel like it was hard for me to find people who felt similar things about it. I think it's gained more of a reputation over the years as kind of a hidden gem or whatever.
Totally has.
So I'm glad that that's happened over the years. I just love that he just kind of like has the balls to like say, okay, yeah, that's only a dream. And now we're going to get into it again. I like that Rebecca Romijn plays two characters, and it kind of borders on kind of campy in a way. He does have a lot of that going on in some of his movies. But I just like what she did with it. It's kind of a movie I just get lost in, maybe because of all the visual quality of it. I just kind of get lost in it, and I just really appreciate it while I watch it. Just like, I can just get lost in this movie and just have fun with De Palma exploring themes that he's explored before, but just throwing things at you, and in its very modern way at the time, and it's also just a movie that's kind of just flew under the radar. Didn't do very well. It made like $6 million at the box office, so. No one was loving Femme Fatale. It did better, I think, overseas, I think, generally. But at this point, all of his movies were just, or even throughout his career, I feel like with the non-blockbustery type movies like Scarface and Untouchables and Mission Impossible, most of his movies were more appreciated by Europeans.
Totally.
Who kind of got it. That's kind of why you could sense why he was making his movie, like opening his movie at Cannes and doing that elaborate sequence, and the perfect use of Bolero. I love. He said it was like it was just very seductive, the camera, and just I like that. I like that about it. And one thing we haven't mentioned about his movies is obsession with technology. Is definitely alive in a movie like Femme Fatale, with whether it's photography or it's the lots of shots of like screens and how that imagery can affect other imagery, and by this point, he was making that commentary how imagery can affect the way we look at things and how we appreciate things, and just seeing it through his eyes. And he's been saying that throughout his career. And it's so funny where we've gone with technology. I feel like he's ripe for making a movie more about that. I think he sort of did that with Passion a bit. His last theatrical movie to date. With technology plays a key role in that one as well, and I think he has another good technology movie in him, and he definitely used it in like movies like Mission Impossible and a few others, his early ones. We might get to another one soon, but I just really appreciate Femme Fatale, and I think Rebecca Romijn is pretty good in it, and I kind of will defend her performance. I know it was hated by a lot of people, but I kind of just like watching her, and I like she plays also the pouty French woman in it, and who kind of has to lure Peter Coyote into a relationship later on in the movie. I just like this.
I do always have a crush on Peter Coyote, so I liked him in that. I was like, oh, there he is. He's still
right. And he's playing like a lot of the characters. He's playing a politician or wannabe politician. So, and Greg Henry, of course, shows up in it, and a few other actors that I like a lot. And I just loved it. I just really get lost in it. So that's why I had to put it in my number 3. Needs more love.
You talk about it, maybe I want to watch it again. Although when I watched it the last time, I was like, I never want to watch this movie again. So we're gonna have to see what happens.
It's interesting. We have such opposite reactions to it.
I know.
You can watch it anytime. All right, let's move on with some more top 5 lists. Here we go. Ginny Hall Cameron. Her number 5 is Dressed to Kill. Her number 4 is Scarface. Her number 3 is Body Double. Her number 2 is Carrie, and her number 1 is Blowout. Dustin Putman of the Film File, in no particular order because it's impossible to quantify perfection. Dressed to Kill, Blowout, Carrie, Body Double, and Raising Cain. And Brad Yasuda, his number 5 is Raising Cain. Number 4 is Scarface. Number 3 is Carlito's Way. Number 2 is The Fury. And number 1 is Dressed to Kill, with honorable mentions going out to Carrie, Obsession, Sisters, and Snake Eyes. See, another person loves Obsession. And Kieran Edwards, his number 5 is Blowout. Number 4 is The Untouchables. Number 3 is Phantom of the Paradise. Number 2 is Carrie, and number 1 is Sisters, with honorable mentions going to Carlito's Way, Body Double, and Raising Cain. So more people mentioned Raising Cain than I thought they would. Awesome. Melinda McClure, 5 is Casualties of War. 4 is Blowout. 3 is Scarface. Number 2 is The Untouchables. Number 1 is Carrie. Leo Logan, number 5 is Mission to Mars. Number 4 is Mission Impossible. Number 3 is Carlito's Way. Number 2 is Scarface. And number 1 is The Untouchables.
I love that Mission to Mars was on his list. Very bold.
Yeah, very bold. I like Mission to Mars. Let's get into, all right, we love De Palma. We obviously know Femme Fatale is one of your least favorite. Do you have any other least favorite De Palmas?
Well, interestingly, you had said earlier you wanted to defend whether we were going to defend Bonfire of the Vanities. I don't know that I could say that that's true because I read the book Bonfire of the Vanities. I hadn't seen the movie literally since it first came out on video in the early 90s when I was very, very young and I just didn't get it at all. And then I read the book recently and I fucking loved the book. I think it's just an amazing read and really kind of a nice issue of the complexity of race and class and the way they intersect in a city, and also a great satire of those things. So then I was really excited to watch the movie, and I turned it off after 15 minutes because I never should watch a movie right after, like the day after I read a book that I love, because it never works. Like I didn't like High Fidelity when I saw it in the theater because I just read the book, and then I saw it a little while later and I liked it more. But oh my god, the intense broadness of it, the heightened I mean, it's funny because I like the heightened acting in Scarface, but oh my god, you always complain about Bruce Willis in movies. Jesus Christ, this is the most Bruce Willis obnoxious Nightmare from Hell movie ever, and I know he's supposed to be annoying like that, but I kind of couldn't deal with it. I think that Tom Hanks is probably the worst casting in a movie ever for that role. It's just ridiculous how inappropriate. I mean, Robert Redford in the 70s should have played that role, or it's not Tom Hanks. And every second of the movie, I just felt it. I was like, oh, this casting is so bad. And then, one of the things that's great in the book is that the encounter that happens between Sherman, the Wall Street broker, and the African-American kid, they have this encounter that becomes violent, and it's never clear how it happened. But it's very much suggested that, Sherman was just having the racist panic that we now see all the time with the police and with lots of different people, and that created the violence. Then in the movie, and granted, if I saw the rest of the movie, maybe this gets turned on its face, but it's just like, oh yeah, these black thugs were like coming after him, so he just like attacked them in self-defense. And I was like, I don't like that change so much. But again, maybe I need to watch the rest of the movie. Maybe that changes. But I just couldn't hack it. So that's one movie not so crazy about. But I'll watch it again. And I liked Melanie in it. Let's see. Are there any other ones of his that I've seen that I just didn't? Oh my God, Black Dahlia. Oh, I saw that in the theater and I was just like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. It was another one of those where I was just like, I'm so bored. I want to go home. Like, why am I trapped here? Although one of my friends recently just gave me this whole theory on like why the Black Dahlia is like some Brechtian masterpiece, and like Brian De Palma purposefully chose like Scarlett Johansson. He purposefully miscast her in the role so that she would just seem like a really bizarre performance. I don't know if I believe it, but maybe I'll watch it again. So those are the two I think of as the Brian De Palma movies I really don't like. What about you?
Thinking about it, God, I like so many of his movies. I would say Wise Guys. It was okay when I saw it in '86, but it didn't really leave a big impression on me as a comedy, as like a Brian De Palma comedy. I think some of his his early comedies like Hi Mom work a lot better. Maybe he's not a great comedy director like that and Wise Guys and Home Movies. I didn't think it was that funny either. I think that was his experimental movie he did at Sarah Lawrence.
Oh yeah.
With his students. So maybe not as great, but I think Hi Mom is pretty great. And I like Black Dahlia actually. I thought that was kind of I kind of enjoyed that. I mean, it wasn't great, but I liked some of the casting choices. I thought Hilary Swank was an odd choice. There's some definitely awesome odd choices in there, but I thought she was pretty over the top and fun.
I remember thinking Hilary Swank was the one thing about it that I really, really loved.
And it's just another gorgeous visual movie, but yeah, maybe lacking some of the more classic De Palma stuff. I like Mission to Mars. I know that one gets a lot of hate. I think that was another movie that I enjoyed in the theater. I haven't seen it that much.
I love that Courtney Love was going to be in it. That would have changed everything. That Courtney Love in a Brian De Palma movie would have been perfection.
I think she was actually going to be in the other Mars movie that came out around the same time, the Ghosts of Mars. I think you're probably thinking of.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's so sad. Okay.
Yeah, she actually was hired to be in Ghost of Mars, the Carpenter movie, and didn't show up. She just didn't show up to work, and so they had to scramble, and they eventually cast Natasha Henstridge to fill in for her. But A Mission to Mars was kind of big studio movie. Some good actors in there: Tim Robbins, Gary Sinise. I liked it. Snake Eyes I actually like too. I think that movie gets a lot of flack. Nicolas Cage movie because it's a Nicolas Cage movie, but I think there's some good visual stuff in there, and I think Carla Gugino is really good in that one. I think she's the best thing in the movie. God, I didn't really like Casualties of War. I thought that was a bit much, but then I'm not a big war movie guy, as you know. I don't really like war movies at all. You give me the best war movies, I don't really want to watch this. And Casualties of War was one of those movies. It came out in the 80s, and I'm like, all these movies that come out about war, about the Vietnam War, and I just didn't really want to watch it, and I wasn't in the mood to watch it, and I had to go see it because it was De Palma, and I just wasn't that into it. I thought, like everyone else thought Michael J. Fox was cast, and I didn't think Sean Penn was that great in it either. But then I had a reverse feelings for Sean Penn in a De Palma movie with Carlito's Way. I think he's amazing in that. So not a lot of De Palma movies that I don't like. I feel like most of them I do like, but some of them just have Redacted. I guess maybe I don't like as much. That his war movie. One thing about De Palma, he does like he does put a lot of politics in his movies.
Yeah.
Redacted is like his straight up like political movie, but I didn't really care for the style of the movie. That it was like mostly from technology point of view with like online and from people's cameras point of view. I'm not a big found footage kind of person, so I just wasn't enjoying that aspect of it. I feel like that took away from the story. There's definitely some shocking moments in it and some really good things in it, but I just didn't. It's like a one-time watch, and I feel like a lot of De Palma's movies. I like looking at his list of movies. Like I've watched a lot of these movies over and over.
Yeah.
And just some, I guess the lesser ones, I guess, are the ones I didn't watch over and over. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. Let's get into your number 2. Here's the trailer.
Brian De Palma, the master of the macabre, invites you to a showing of the latest fashion in murder. Dressed to Kill, Michael Caine, Angie Dickinson, Nancy Allen. Murder, made to order by Brian De Palma. Rated R.
Held over for third big week. Check newspapers for theaters and showtimes.
Dressed to Kill. So much to say about Dressed to Kill. So much to be about Dressed to Kill. Oh my God, I love this movie so much. I recently heard somebody compare it, as somebody writing about the movie when it came out in 1980, saying it was like the horror movie version of An Unmarried Woman, and I love that. It's so true. It so is that kind of like New York, that upper middle class, or possibly middle upper class New York woman scene of that moment. And it really actually is a lot like An Unmarried Woman. Like, it's about a woman kind of trying to find herself, going to therapy, exploring her sexuality, except that she gets, brutally massacred by a transvestite. Well, by not a transvestite, right? They say he's not. By somebody who has gender issues, I guess. And I'm probably being offensive. It's too late at night, but in an elevator. Anyway, she gets brutally killed, and then suddenly the story is about a hooker with a heart of gold, and it goes from being An Unmarried Woman to Clute. But all my favorite movies in one, directed by De Palma with a very inimitable style. Now, this was the movie that really pissed off feminists for the first time, because actually I think that Sisters and Carrie are, to me, unabashedly feminist movies. I just don't even think there's any question about it. And I think Dressed to Kill actually is very feminist too, if you kind of look beyond the fact that, a woman is brutally massacred and then after having sex. I mean, I don't think for a minute that Brian De Palma is trying to convey some notion that the woman is being punished for having sex, and that's why she's being killed. I think if anything, it's the opposite. The movie is really saying that all of these kind of fucked up systems about gender, and then this might be intentional or not, because I don't know if Brian De Palma was really thinking about this, but this is really what comes across to me, that, there are all these fucked up systems in place about what your gender is supposed to be and what your sexuality is supposed to be, and if they're repressed, like they are with the Michael Caine character, it creates violence. And that was actually a really interesting ongoing theme in a lot of early 80s movies that were then treated as misogynistic or homophobic. I mean, I think it's really a major underlying theme or message going on in Cruising, too. And I could see why at the time, when violence against women and violence against gay men was so much in the news, and there was just so much of it. There was so much anti-feminist, anti-gay backlash going on, that those movies might not have seemed like the best idea. But, I think they're among many movies from the 70s that when we look at them now from our perspective, we could see that maybe what was happening in them is not what the culture was interpreting them to be, because of other factors that were going on in the culture at the time. So, I love it. I think it's a feminist movie. I think that the other reason that that I think feminists didn't like it was because it, Angie Dickinson has that rape fantasy at the beginning. But again, I don't think the movie is suggesting that women want to be raped, but I think that rape fantasies, which have nothing to do with real rape, are a real thing. And I think it's interesting that the movie explores it in an interesting way, even if it was maybe sending a message that wasn't great to rapists who, are fucked up, but that's not the movie's fault. And other than that, it's just, a crackerjack thriller. And the other reason I think the movie's feminist is because of Nancy Allen's character. I mean, she is amazing and totally upends any kind of stereotypical role idea of what a prostitute is supposed to be. And to me, the scene that exemplifies that the most is when she's on the phone with her madam or whatever, trying to get dates to make some money, and on the phone with her stockbroker, negotiating with him about what stocks to buy and not, and just putting on these two very different roles for very different purposes, and just showing that she's this totally tough chick who knows what she has to do to get what she wants. It's I think it maybe is Nancy Allen's best performance, and just such a great role. And the way that she and Cade Miller's son kind of work together to overthrow this fucked up patriarchal craziness that is Michael Caine's poor character, is just really, really, really great. And again, the movie, it was said the movie's offensive to transgender people, and that I took that, in my moment of being sick of Brian De Palma and thinking that he was toxic because of his weird gender and sexuality stuff, I started to feel that way about Dressed to Kill too. I was like, it does hate women, it does hate transgender people, like, I don't like it anymore. But, it's, I mean, you have to have a really nuanced understanding of what transgender actually means and how it's not at all what's going on in this film, which I think probably nobody did. And I think that it probably was a toxic, pathologizing depiction of gender nonconformity and gender nonconventionality. But, also it was 1980 and whatever. I don't know. I can forgive it now. But I think that ultimately what's going on in this movie is that it's about how sexual repression and repression of your gender identity and difficulty over your gender identity that's kind of rooted in social stigma creates violence against women. So that's my very long, very tangential spiel. I'm interested to know what you have to say about Dressed to Kill.
I obviously love Dressed to Kill. I think it's one of his best films. It seduces me from the beginning. Casting Angie Dickinson in what you think is going to be the lead role kind of will already hooks me in. I love her. She's in one of my all-time favorite movies, Pretty Maids All in a Row. Have you seen that?
I've actually never seen that movie.
See that movie. It's amazing. And, I watched her on TV and Policewoman, and that was his thinking too. He was going for the psycho, cast someone who's immediately likable and a big star at the time, and then partway through the movie, kill her off. And I think this movie does that brilliantly. It does the Hitchcock thing brilliantly. It takes it a bit further with the stuff in the shower and and what it's trying to say about sexuality and genders, and it definitely takes it places further than Hitchcock could and would. And I like that it's an alluring thriller that revolves around sexuality and just the idea of it's kind of like his slasher movie in a way.
Yeah, totally.
Whether he will, probably deny that. I don't think he was into making the idea of making a slasher movie, but that's what Dressed to Kill kind of is. It's the classiest slasher movie of the time, probably, and I like that about it. And I like that there's really good actors in there. I like Nancy Allen, of course. I think she's great in this movie, and I like that she partners up with. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name.
Keith Gordon.
She partners up with Keith Gordon, thank you. And I just love their little alliance, the nerd and the prostitute versus the bad guy. I mean,
beautiful.
It's kind of like a dream scenario for a plot to me.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with the movie's politics or not, I feel like that's the kind of plotting and story structure that I appreciate and want to see. I'm not for movies kind of go to those places anymore and have violence and sexuality in them anymore. I feel like it has to be one or the other. So I feel like I appreciate those movies over time that go to those places. It's not enough of them anymore, and I wanted to see that in movies. De Palma was great at making the erotic thriller, but he was also good at creating these characters that you can kind of root for and get behind. And I really do get behind Nancy Allen and Keith Gordon in this movie. I kind of it did kill me a bit when just Dickinson died, but it was such a brilliant scene. That scene in the elevator, I feel like one of the best slasher scenes in horror movie history.
So scary,
so well done, so well made and put together, and there's a sleuthing that goes on in the movie. I love it. True slasher movie. Now that I think about it, I mean, there's so much of it. It's like a slasher movie. And it's funny because he comments on that in his next movie after this, which we'll get to soon. I don't know, Michael Caine's good in the movie. I wonder what the movie would have been had he stuck to his original choice, which was Sean Connery to play that role.
Fascinating.
I think Sean Connery was doing something else. I don't remember what he was doing at the time, but so he was too busy. I think casting Sean Connery, of course, would have taken someone with a persona, the James Bond guy, and playing with that, which would have fit well in the movie. But also, he was also riffing on Hitchcock again, of course, because Sean Connery was in a Hitchcock film, Marnie. So that would have been fun to see that. But I do like Michael Caine a lot, I like the idea of an alternate universe where Sean Connery is playing that part as well. Because he's such a manly man.
Therapy scene definitely would have had a lot more realistic sexual tension.
Yeah, exactly. I think so, for sure. I just think Andrew Dickinson in those early scenes with the elaborate scene in the museum is amazing. I love that stuff in that movie. It kind of really sticks with me when I think about Dress to Kill. I love that she's just making up a grocery list, and while she's also possibly getting picked up by someone.
Yeah.
And also being stalked. I think it's just an amazing scene. I feel like not many thrillers can pull off all that stuff. And as elaborate.
It must be said, another one of the most underrated performances of like the 80s and maybe ever.
I agree. Yeah, I feel like she never got to do that. She was funny in certain movies. Like she's kind of funny in Pretty Maids all in a row, as well as being very sexy. I feel like she never got really, because she was always known as policewoman or just a sex pot. But I like her. She had a lot of versatility as an actress. So De Palma cast wisely there. And, casting Nancy Allen again, he used her in Carrie up until this point? I think it was the only other thing she was in.
I think so.
And then he wrote this role specifically for her. He was there were a couple by this point, I believe, right? Or married, maybe? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they were married.
So he wrote this plum role for her, and I just love that about it. And a lot of these Hollywood marriages obviously don't last and didn't last, but he gave her a great role with this and the next one to come, and I just love her. I just love Nancy Allen. I feel like Nancy Allen's another one of our unsung heroes.
Definitely.
Of 80s and 70s movies. I just get to watch her in anything, and she's great here. I just love her character so much. And I love the location stuff in the movie, the subways, and just the places the movie goes, and some phenomenal stuff in the movie.
That scene with Nancy Allen in the subway is extraordinary, and I think everyone always talks about the museum sequence, but when I was watching that recently, the subway scene, I was just like, I don't even know how this was done. This is amazing.
He does some great stuff in some ways, like he did in Carlito's Way as well.
Yeah, right.
He just knows how to really utilize that locations and makes the most of them. I think a lot of what makes De Palma work well as a filmmaker, he plans everything out, he storyboards everything out, he figures out all his shots, and it really just when he gets to a set, he just kind of goes through the motions of just having to shoot it, but he knows exactly what he wants. And not a lot of filmmakers know exactly what they want when they work on movies, so it leads to a lot of sometimes chaos on a film set. And I've been on sets where like the director is not quite sure, and so you have producers kind of trying to meddle. But I think you don't go to a set and like producers are meddling with how shots should be done on a Brian De Palma movie, because he knows exactly what he wants, and he's just there to do the job and get it done. Because to him, it's already in his head and already filmed. So I just love that about him. He just knows he has such a great command of the camera and of the space. And Dress to Kill, more than a lot of his other movies, just really utilizes that so well. And so there's so many great set pieces and moments in the movie, but also again great performances. So that's what I love about it. Yay, Dress to Kill. Let's move on to my number 2. Here is the trailer.
It began with a sound that no one was ever supposed to hear.
He's the one who saw it?
Yes, he says he pulled a girl out of the car.
I would like you to forget about her.
Yeah, that's what I heard just before the tire blew out. You're right, it was a shot.
He recorded a murder they say never happened.
There's still loose ends, witnesses. The girl, I've decided to terminate her. Terminate her. Terminate her.
Brian De Palma's Blowout. Now you hear it. Now you don't.
Okay, that's the trailer for Blowouts, Brian De Palma's next film that he did after Dress to Kill. So it's an 81 release. And yet, yes, another summer movie. It was actually released July 24th, 81. So let's all go out with the family and go see Blowout.
There's something wonderfully uncynical about that. You know, like this, they were like, oh yeah, well, of course people are going to want to see this dark Brian De Palma movie in the summer. People are smart enough to want that. Like, that would never happen now.
It never would happen. No, it would be released on as few screens as possible, or even just like dumped to. I feel like it would be like on Netflix or something in a month. Because, yeah, what would a studio do with a movie like this? United Artists released this film, and this is a very cynical film about an audio engineer who ear witnesses a murder and leads to all sorts of trouble. Obviously, a big homage to like movie like Blow Up and Rear Window, but this is definitely De Palma taking it a bit more seriously than some of his other movies, like where he's having more fun. I think he's definitely having fun with some of the visual stuff here, but he definitely wants to really make you feel something. You feel its characters a bit more, and feel some of the tension and some of the darkness, the places that it goes in the story, unlike some of his other films. So I think this is definitely De Palma at his height of his powers. The ability to make such a well-made movie, but also to make you feel so much in a movie. And he has a great performance by John Travolta in the lead, but also Nancy Allen again doing another great performance. You have John there doing a good job, and a few other actors. But really, John Travolta and Nancy Allen in this movie and really make this movie work for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny enough, the studio, because because he went with John Travolta, who he obviously worked with before, once before, and we'll get to that movie soon, I promise. But he wanted John Travolta. He knew he could do this, and I guess John Travolta, because he was already in Grease, maybe wasn't being taken as seriously. He was an urban cowboy right before this. Hit all big hits, but maybe not taken as seriously as an actor. But I think.
And don't forget, Moment by Moment kind of threw a knife in his career, even though I love that movie.
That's right. So yeah, maybe he was a little bit down because of that, and maybe not getting as much recognition as he should have. But he really gives him a great role here as this guy who just kind of his life is just in shambles because of the events of this movie, and just by the end of the movie, you're just really feeling for this guy. I just love Travolta in the movie. I think he gives another great performance like he did in Saturday Night Fever. So two of my favorite John Travolta performances, definitely. I just love that. Travolta, because he was cast in this movie, the studio immediately wanted to pair him up with Olivia Newton-John. So they were going to force him to do that. What's that?
They wanted to cast him in Korean Blowout?
Yeah, because of that. Because they've been trying to get them together in another movie, and so they're like, oh yeah, so let's just get her in this movie, and they try to force it on De Palma, who of course was not going to have that.
Can you imagine the ending of this movie with Olivia Newton-John?
That would be insane.
I would almost like to see that alternate universe movie.
That would be something for sure. I'm gonna say it. I mean, I'm gonna probably alienate some people. I don't think she quite had the chops to pull off a role like this. Like, I love Olivia Newton-John, and I love her in her musicals, but I don't think she could pull off a dramatic role as well. I'm not sure if I would believe her as much as I do Nancy Allen in this movie. I love Nancy Allen that much. Sorry, I hate to make comparisons. So I'm not sure if I'd want to see that, but I'm definitely curious about it.
I would just be so fascinated.
It would be fascinating for sure. Yeah, like mentioning Dressed to Kill, like how he was doing his slasher movie. This movie comments on slasher movies. I don't know if De Palma was in favor of them, because you have Travolta working on a slasher movie and trying to get a good scream for a slasher movie, and that leads to him recording some screams in the movie. I get the sense that he's maybe not as enamored with them, and because maybe slasher movies at the time were a bit cynical, because they were kind of cash grabs by 1981.
Totally.
Which we don't care about, because we just want a fun slasher movie, but we can appreciate a fun, silly, dumb slasher movie as well as a great movie like Blowout. That's kind of where we're coming from with this, but maybe filmmakers at the time weren't agreeing with us. But I like that there's that element of that. You get to see some of the footage of that slasher movie. This is again Vilmos Sigmund doing the cinematography, Pino Donaggio doing the score. So he gets all the great. He has all the great people working on this movie, so you get a beautiful movie, and you get the split diopters, really well done in this movie. I would consider this one of his most political films for sure. Politics definitely play a big hand in the story, and ultimately the cynicism of politics, and how the good guy doesn't always win. Which is often true in politics, as much as you want them to. But
God, don't say it.
The system is so rigged that we'll never ever have the good guy winning on our side. So I just love this movie. I think it's so well done. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I loved it. The minute I saw it, I loved it. On Laserdisc, actually.
Oh, wow.
I got the Laserdisc at a $10 bin, because I was never able to find until then, and I was so excited. One of the best Pino Donaggio scores ever, I think. And it was quoted in an interesting way. Was it in Death Proof that he quotes Blowout? He does, yeah, when she's texting. He uses that. It just makes it such a swoon-worthy scene because the music for Blowout is so romantic, which goes so against just the tragedy that befalls it. The first time I saw it, I didn't like Nancy Allen's performance in it because she was just like, I don't know, her voice, it just seemed a little bit too like simpery, airhead, like good girl. It was just so not as forceful as her performances as Chris Hargensen and Liz Blake. But I appreciate it now. You know, it definitely makes the ending more devastating. I mean, she's much more the stereotypical hooker with a heart of gold than Liz Blake was. But I think that actually, because Nancy Allen is doing the role, it isn't nearly as much of a joke as it could have become if, say, Olivia Newton-John had been playing her. You know, just because she's Nancy Allen, she somehow gives her a lot of soul. I love just the way that the movie's visuals kind of trace John Travolta's sort of emotional decompensation. I mean, there's that famous scene where the camera's going around and around and around like the audio tape, and I think that's great. But De Palma says something really interesting about Blowout in the documentary about him, and I'm sure I'm going to misquote it. But it was something like how he wanted to make a movie, or he was interested in Blowout because it showed the way that all of this behind the scenes pathos just goes into like one shot. That it's making one shot effective. That's, you know, the audiences will barely notice, and that is a really profound thing that's going on in this movie. You really see all of the different kinds of pain that can go into one throwaway shot in a slasher movie. I love it. It's amazing. It's astonishing. I want to watch it again. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah, the Criterion Blu-ray is pretty great.
Yeah,
and has a good interview with De Palma. I think Noah Baumbach might have done the interview on there. So I need to watch that documentary too to get some of the stories. What De Palma thinks about the film now, but I'm sure he considers it one of his best films. I feel like he does. It certainly does hold up really well, a lot more than some of his others. I feel like it's gotten more appreciated over time. I don't think it didn't. Again, a summer movie that didn't do very well for him back then. But I definitely feel like the studio dropped the ball with this one because it's definitely a movie that would have been more appreciated if it wasn't released in the summer of '81.
Yeah, it should have been like a prestige winter release.
Yes, you would think, but I feel like maybe because they had a Travolta film, they thought, we'll get as many people in the theater as possible and pack them in and see what they think. It's too heady for that, I think.
It's funny though. It's like I don't know. Like there's a part of me that doesn't really see why Blowout wouldn't have popular appeal. You know, like it's still an awesome thriller, but I guess people just don't want to be depressed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of a movie is like a lot of what a successful movie is, like how you leave the theater. What does it make you feel when you leave the theater? If you're leaving the theater feeling kind of bummed out because maybe things don't go the way they should, that definitely affects a movie's box office.
Right.
It's a little different now, but that was definitely the feeling back then. So he was definitely going against what people were doing then. I appreciate that he's taking those big chances and having a studio behind him to make that movie, the movie he wanted to make, and love it. And I don't think he had not made it. I think it took him a while to make another movie after Scarface. It was a couple of years later, so he probably needed a little break after that.
Oh God, what a follow-up. Blood and Scarface, that's quite a double feature. This is the male self-destruction double feature.
Oh, definitely. They do kind of pair well now that I think about it. Let's get a few more lists in here before we get to our number ones. Emily Grinnis, in no particular order, The Untouchables, Sisters, Body Double, Blowout, and Phantom of the Paradise. Reese G. Dunnell, Carrie, Just to Kill, Phantom of the Paradise. Sisters and the Untouchables. Ted King wrote in Carrie, Body Double, Blowout, The Untouchables, and Scarface. Andrew Parker, Toronto-based film critic. He's number 5 is Mission Impossible. Number 4 is The Untouchables. Number 3 is Body Double. Number 2 is Phantom of the Paradise. And number 1 is Blowout. Special shout-outs to Snake Eyes, Carrie, Casualties of War, Wise Guys, and Carlito's Way. Mike Gallagher, his number 5 is Phantom of the Paradise. 4 is Casualties of War. 3 is Wise Guys. 2 is Carlito's Way. Number 1 is Scarface. With honorable mentions going out to Carrie, Body Double, Blowout, Dress to Kill, Sisters, Oh Crap, all of this stuff.
Well, just Scott Skid who said that, like, whenever we have honorable mentions, we just say, like, every movie.
Yeah. Rusty Muffet, number 5 is Carrie. 4 is Scarface. 3 is Body Double. 2 is Blowout. Number 1 is Phantom of the Paradise. David Assassino, number 5 is Blowout. Number 4 is Carrie. 3 is Dress to Kill. And he has a tie at number 1 with Body Double and Phantom of the Paradise. Our good pal, Quentin Dunn, he wrote in number 5 is Carrie. Number 4 is Phantom of the Paradise. Number 3 is The Untouchables. Number 2 is Body Double. And number 1 is Dress to Kill. Thank you, Quentin. Thank you, guys. And I have one more list. It's a longish one. Ara Alashan, he wrote in, I absolutely adore Brian De Palma, so ranking his work seems nearly impossible. I'll try my best, but don't be surprised if I send you a dozen or so revisions before the episode airs. Well, without further ado, number 5 is Snake Eyes, 1998. I'm admittedly not the biggest Nicolas Cage fan, but he's absolutely perfect in this role. Did I mention I'm hopelessly in love with Carla Gugino? Me too. I love her. Number 4 is Carrie from 1976. Number 3 is Dress to Kill, 1980. Number 2 is Body Double, 1984. And his number 1 is Blowout, 1981. Co-ed Frenzy alone may be worth the number 1 spot on its own merit, but as it turns out, the rest of the film is damn near perfect as well. It's a good scream. It's a good scream. Huh. Raising Cain, 1992, deserves a spot on this list, goddammit, but I'm going to resist the urge of ranking it alongside another entry as a tie. Oh, and for the record, Carlito's Way is a very near and dear to me as well. As controversial as it may seem, I prefer it to Scarface. Well, that's it for now. Keep up the great work, gentlemen. Thank you, Ara. Great lists. And thank you, everyone, who's written the list. These are all great, and we feel the De Palma love. Let's get into your number 1. Here's the trailer.
It's the night of the senior prom. The Bates High School gym is alive with excitement. Everybody is there, even Carrie White, the girl no one likes.
We're all sorry about this incident, Cassie.
It's Carrie!
And everyone makes fun of her. The girl who lives in that creepy house with her crazy mother.
Help the sinning woman see the sin of her days and ways. Show her that if she had remained sinless, the curse of blood would never have come on her.
The girl with the strange power.
If I concentrate hard enough, I can move things.
But tonight, no one will laugh at Carrie.
If you don't have a date for the prom next Friday, would you like to go with me?
She's with the best-looking boy in the senior class.
You're just trying to trick me again.
She'll be voted queen of the prom.
You know, I can make sure that you don't hurt Carrie White anymore.
For Carrie, it will be a dream come true. For everyone else, it will be a nightmare. Carrie. A new film by Brian De Palma. Based on the chilling bestseller. Starring Sissy Spacek, Piper Laurie, and introducing John Travolta in his first motion picture role. If you have a taste for terror, you have a date with Carrie.
Oh, I love the trailer and hate the trailer for Carrie so much because it's so kind of it emphasizes the horror aspect so much when really this is a very human tragedy. And also kind of an amazing satire. I remember when I was obsessed with Carrie when I was in 7th grade because I was an outcast and I was traumatized and I had, a stressful home life and I just wanted to kill everybody with my powers. I just really oh God, yes. I was like, give me a goddamn pink dress. I'm going to go in there and kick everybody's ass with my eyes and it's going to be beautiful. And that didn't happen. But I remember reading Pauline Kael's review, and she said it was funny. And I was like, fuck that shit. This movie isn't funny. This is the most serious, profound, important, realistic movie ever made. And Pauline Kael's always saying everything is funny. You read her review of Last House on the Left. She's like, oh, the rape scene is very funny. She was just kind of really bizarre. I mean, that is not a real example. But she just had the most dark sense of humor. But ironically now when I watch it, I realize it is funny for exactly the reason that I couldn't see that it was funny in 7th grade, which is that it perfectly demonstrates the way that high schoolers elevate everything that's going on with them to this immense, tragic, operatic level. So, the fact that Chris and Norma might not be able to go to the prom becomes just this ordeal that's worthy of creating this Greek tragedy situation of humiliating Carrie. It's just so, it's not funny because it's terrible, but it is kind of funny because teenagers are so fucking crazy and their emotions are so fucking insane. And the fact that the movie is at such an emotional fever pitch the whole time, it just really captures. Again, it's like talking about how there's something about the way that De Palma uses form that's erotic, that conveys his erotic relationship to the form itself. With Carrie, he uses form to convey just hormonal rage, which is really impressive. And also, really, really, really does a great job of showing how. And if I'm really talking so much only about characters and story and themes and not the movie's amazing style, it's just because I feel like this is never talked about, so it's more interesting. I could talk about all the amazing stylistic flourishes in this movie, but I'm just rather talk about the other stuff. The way that social factors create outcasts, the way that her fucked up religious fanatic, sexually oppressive mother just beats her life force out of her, and then the kids at school sense it and destroy her because of it. It's just a really great movie about the way that society creates ostracism, and just doing that within the kind of horror genre and operatic melodrama genre. It's so extraordinary, and there's a great. I think it's an amazing depiction. One of the most influential books that I've read that on my dissertation and on classes that I've taught on trauma and film, in which I usually include Carrie, is called Trauma and Human Existence. And the argument that the author Robert Stolorow makes is that while people often think that a trauma is just a singular event that has a profound effect on somebody's life, it's actually often a context, a series of events or having to exist within certain kind of social situations for an ongoing time. And Carrie brilliantly shows what it's like to live and experience a traumatic context, and it uses form to show what the subject is. So yeah, those are my main thoughts about Carrie. It's one of those movies where everything that you could say has already been said. Of course, endless praise to Nancy Allen, Amy Irving, PJ Soles, Piper Laurie, Betty Buckley, William. What the fuck is his name?
William Catt.
William Catt, right. Edie McClurg. What a crazy tour de force cast. John Travolta. It's up there with The Fury as just crazy amazing cast. And it's just flawless. And just unbelievably, even though I can see the humor now, it's almost unbelievably painful to watch because it just captures that painful time in my own life so accurately. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people just think it's their favorite Brian De Palma movie. It's just so many of my emotions are just inseparable from it. Love it.
Man, I feel absolutely the same way. I'm so connected to it because of those emotional places it goes to. mean, this is definitely his most emotional movie in a way.
Yeah,
I mean, he just really lets it all hang out in this one. And, of course, this was based on source material, Stephen King's story, and that's a great book.
Yes.
But this is this is De Palma's his interpretation of it. It's just so well done, and I just connect with Sissy Spacek in this movie so much. I mean, she is our teenage years, our awkward teenage years. She represents all those things that we hated ourselves, and now kind of look back and kind of feel nostalgic for. That awkwardness that we all had and we all went through, every one of us, is there on the screen in all its glory and all its pain and suffering. It's a heartbreaking movie, and yeah, the ending is heartbreaking, but I still can go back to this movie from time to time and feel those emotions and not feel like I'm letting myself suffer for watching it. I know some people have the problem not being able to revisit Carrie because of its heartbreaking ending.
Yeah.
But I feel like I can go through that because I feel like the movie gives me everything I need and all those emotions. I want to feel those emotions. I feel like that's why I do love teen films so much, and teen dramas and angsty films and teen comedies, because they do go through those pains of childhood. They do tap into that, and I very much in tune with those years of my life, and Carrie kind of represents the horror element, the horror version of that, and it does it so well, and the best representation of teen drama and angst and horror film. And I just wish I had telekinesis. I feel like, I feel like that is one of the ultimate powers to have. And especially as a teenager, because you feel so many of these strong emotions, you just want to lash out and just and just use those powers to hurt someone because they're making you feel so fucking awful. I just love that it goes those places. So like you said, everything has been said about Carrie, and we can go on about the prom sequence and certain aspects of the movie, but people have said it and have said it better than I can. So, but I just can say that I really, like you, just so drawn to this movie emotionally, and kind of makes me feel so many things that I just speak to me and tell me that this is who I am. As much as I'm not Carrie White, I am Carrie White.
Yes.
We all are Carrie White in a way. I mean, some of us are not. certain politicians are not Carrie White.
Yes, some of us are Chris Hardwick.
Yes, exactly. Good and evil exists in this world in all forms, and Carrie White's a pretty complicated character. Her mom is a very complicated character, and yeah, this is Brian De Palma's ultimate feminist movie. I feel like he really just really taps into it and just really goes there. And Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie just give amazing performances, and I almost wish they had Oscars for them so they could prove to the world that horror actors are worthy and deserve these accolades because they can be just as brilliant as a performer in a serious drama or a more serious studio picture. I just feel like horror has its place in that world, and in the studio film and the awards world. It does need to be appreciated more, and I'm glad they were nominated. But yeah, I wish they had won. I can't remember who won 1970. Who won 76 anyway?
Network, Faye Dunaway, Network.
Oh, Faye Dunaway, of course. It was a great.
I mean, if you're gonna beat out Sissy Spacek, not bad.
Yeah,
but honestly, I would have given it to Sissy Spacek over her.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Sissy Spacek really just kind of lets it all hang out, and just really goes there, and very brave performance, and I just love her so much, and just wish she were in everything.
Yeah, totally.
So glad you picked Carrie. Wonderful movie. And let's move on to my number one. Here is the trailer.
Conjoined twins called Siamese challenge life at their first breath. Some twins have been separated and lead normal lives. others never can. Sisters. They were once one in body, and perhaps one in mind. Danielle and Dominique. One loving, one hating, one innocent, the other... Where does Danielle end and Dominique begin?
It's okay. No, I can't remember.
Go back, try. Remember.
He's a freak!
Freak.
He's a freak!
Sisters. Rated R.
Okay, that's the trailer for Sisters. An early Brian. This might be the earliest Brian De Palma movie on the list, 73.
Yeah.
And definitely Brian De Palma doing his full-on Hitchcock thriller. And I would just say it definitely takes it further and goes to pure horror territory. And I love Sisters. I love Margot Kidder in this movie, and Jennifer Salt as well. And I just feel like, it's not as polished as some of the later De Palma movies, but he's definitely using all of his ability at the time to craft the story of these sisters. This woman who's clearly distraught, and her possibly other half who is a much more likable presence, and the woman who kind of the very nosy reporter who kind of stumbles on this murder, and I love that it has those elements of the Hitchcock, the Rear Window thing, and but then it kind of takes it to this pretty disturbing portrait of these women who are women with a psychotic break. Bernard Herrmann, Hitchcock, De Palma rather, employed Hitchcock's own Bernard Herrmann to do the score, and is a great score in the movie. And I love that. He had the balls to do that. And of course, this is where all the criticism started coming in with De Palma aping Hitchcock. But I feel like the story itself is strong enough to tell me a story that I want to see, that doesn't really go to the places that Hitchcock goes, but takes it to another place, and I really enjoyed that. But as well as the performances, again, like Margot Kidder and Jennifer Salt, and I like the split screen. I like all of the technology he uses at the time. I love the Peeping Tom show. Where the characters are introduced, where Margot Kidder and her ultimate date, who is bumped off, are introduced. I love that. It feels very like late 60s, early 70s feeling TV.
Yeah, totally.
But it's also like a satire of candid camera, which was very popular at the time. But voyeurism, of course, is very much a part of Brian De Palma's films, and definitely starting with Sisters, really strong use of that theme, and throughout his career always goes back to it. And I just thought this is a really well-made movie on a small budget, $500,000, made by American International Pictures, independent company at the time, making these kinds of, at the time, maybe schlocky movies and little independent movies that taking a chance on a filmmaker, a burgeoning great filmmaker like Brian De Palma, and just letting him make his movie, and what a movie he made. The best movie ever made on Staten Island, Sisters.
Yeah. That's probably true, actually. I mean, Mortal Thoughts is a close second.
And also, He Knows You're Alone was made on Staten Island.
Which I've never seen, believe it or not.
Oh, you need to see that. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's good.
I love Sisters, and the things that I've come to love about it most are actually kind of small or non-central things that, I love all the everything about the central stuff, but the things that, are just kind of on the sides of it. I love, it's a great movie that captures a time and place. I love its depiction of Staten Island in the 70s. I mean, how many movies about that do you get? And it really, you get just a kind of great sense of the neighborhood. It's another really good apartment movie. I love Margot Kidder's all-white apartment where horrible things take place. And I have a total crush on the guy who she meets on the game show too, which he's so cute. I would have liked to date him. It's too bad what happens to him.
I know, and immediately sympathetic too. Like you like this guy a lot.
Yes. And that's actually a perfect example of how De Palma is really great at creating a character just immediately and giving you a good idea of who that person is with very little time, which, ultimately was greatly beneficial, later with Dressed to Kill. I love the movie's sense of humor. I love Jennifer Salt's mother and all the kooky people at the mental institution, especially the lady who says she got sick because she got germs transmitted through the telephone. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I love. This is another movie that I think is overtly feminist and really smart about. I love in the opening scene how the police don't like Jennifer Salt because she's confronting the forces institutionalized racism. I mean, really ahead of its time and really a good job at showing. And then they belittle her by being misogynistic. Just a great kind of depiction of the way that misogyny and racism are kind of two sides of the same coin. And then it kind of manifests itself too in the depiction of what are the names of Margot Kidder? Is it like Monique and something?
Oh, Monique and oh my god, I'm blanking on her name.
Well, it's okay. There's the good Margot Kidder and bad Margot Kidder, and how bad Margot Kidder is so stigmatized, but really you kind of come to understand why she has this rage. And part of the reason you understand that is because Jennifer Salt literally embodies her and kind of takes on her form when she's in the mental institution and just starts to feel where she's coming from so much. And the idea that the good kind of docile, like good feminine side of her can't exist without this rageful side. It's so interesting. And again, just so insightful into the human psyche, as De Palma was in ways that very few other mainstream genre filmmakers were. I love it. I think it's his best use of split screen ever, actually. I think that, this is in this movie, the split screen really serves an amazing purpose, and it's kind of breathtaking how he used split screen to generate suspense in this movie. I just, beautiful. And also, the Bernard Herrmann married to the Moog synthesizer, that creates some scary, disturbing shit.
That is, that music, that really makes you feel some,
Like the opening credit and in credits, you're just like bludgeoned by this crazy Moog synthesizer score.
pretty experimental for the time too. I feel like taking some chances. I like it. I think it was like Dominique maybe.
Dominique.
Yeah, I don't remember what the other one's name is. I can't remember her name at all. So weird.
I don't either.
I remember them saying Dominique a lot. Danielle, that sounds right.
Is that right? I think
something like that, some sort of D name. Jennifer Salt is great in the movie, but I kind of wish that she played it more Staten Island-y, maybe.
Totally, that's smart.
She was a bit more like Melanie Griffith in Working Girl, like with huge crunchy hair, and that accent, the very Staten Island accent, which is very different from other like Brooklyn or Queens accents.
Yes.
Very specific. She doesn't have that accent in the movie. Kind of wish she did. But
Glenn nailed that in Mortal Thoughts.
Yes, definitely. I like that. I haven't seen Mortal Thoughts since it came out in theaters, actually. So I actually kind of forgot that was a Staten Island movie. It's been so long. So I just think, other than that, I think the performances are really great. And like I said, that sense of humor it has, like especially in the final scene, like that like visual joke in a way. I guess you could kind of interpret it different ways, but I just like that there's a sense of humor throughout the movie, and even though there's some like pretty gruesome things that happen, and also like you said, an apartment movie. It's very white. It is very white now I'm thinking about it. And that blood, which I remember looking pretty fake at the time, like watching it like kind of early on, like, oh, this blood looks fake, because I was used to 80s blood, which looked a bit more real. But 70s blood, if you remember movies from like the early 70s, they all kind of look like orangey, fakey.
Totally, yeah.
So it wasn't just like, like, oh, De Palma got it wrong and like just made the blood look really fake. It's just that that's what fake blood. That's what blood looked like. It looked pretty fake back then.
People expected it, yeah.
Exactly.
Although the idea that like the blood like seeps through the white couch is so gross anyway.
It is pretty gross. I mean, he definitely utilizes. Like, I feel like that's something like Hitchcock wouldn't have shown. He would have been held a little bit more restraint. But then this is the 70s, and you can get away with a bit more, and especially like a little independent movie like this, kind of like pushing the boundaries and just using like his style, like that he's learning his style with split screen, which, like, again, you mentioned was really good. I also agree it's really good in the film, and he's used it throughout his career, and it's one of the things, his hallmarks and trademarks. But when he uses it well, it's like really kind of captivating. You kind of your eyes are like glued to the screen because you don't want to miss anything what's happening on either side of the screen.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. It just kind of forces you to pay attention. Watch my movie. You have to watch. You can't miss anything. I'm going to show you all of this. I'm going to show you from two different sides. Enjoy it. His movies are very cinematic, and I don't see him making like TV movies anytime soon.
No, never. He could never.
Yeah, he's just one of those directors who's never going to work on TV because it's not who he is. Woody Allen is like, one of those directors who, he did TV things occasionally, but he always made like a theatrical film, but now he's even going to TV. Just like that's where a lot of it's going, and his films aren't, maybe some of them are beautiful, but they're not De Palma-esque, where you're just captivated by what's happening on the screen, what the camera's doing, and all the things he does visually. And so there's very few filmmakers now who can actually make a movie that you just have to see in the theater. So maybe that's something I would appreciate about like a filmmaker like Nicholas Refn with Neon Demon. He's forcing you to see this movie theatrically because it's just made for that. It's just so visual.
And that's definitely true. I mean, the size of the screen is part of it, and that's kind of awesome.
Unfortunately, I missed my chance to do that because it didn't last at all theatrically. So sadly, I wasn't able to see it in theaters, but hopefully I can get some of that on a smaller screen. But I do still appreciate going to movies in theaters, and so few filmmakers will make movies that fill up the screen as well as Brian De Palma, but when I do see those movies that do that, I just fall in love with the magic of making movies, and that's what allured someone who was so nerdy and tech savvy as Brian De Palma was. He was a computer nerd when he was a kid, and he fell in love with the magic of making movies and the process, and obviously he's clearly in love with that process, and that's why he's made movies for so long in his career. And even though he hasn't made one in a few years, I await it anxiously and see what he can cook up next. If it's another erotic thriller, I'm happy. If it's going to be an Untouchables-like movie, I'd be into it because he hasn't made one of those in a while. We'll see. We'll see what he has next. I don't know what he's working on or if he's working on anything, but I'm game to see it no matter what it is, because I know I'm going to get something very cinematic, and that's kind of lacking in movies these days. And it won't be a superhero movie. I know that.
Yeah, he hates superhero movies, and he says that he hates making big budget special effects movies. He said he hated making Mission to Mars, that it was just like not fun and way too stressful. And I was like, oh, that's what it's like to watch those movies. And no wonder that's what it's like to make them too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you guys for listening to our thoughts on some of his films, and hopefully we can get you to come back for more. You can find our podcasts on retromovielove.com and iTunes, and you could leave us you can leave us a review on iTunes, or you can rate us. The more people who review and rate us, the more the podcast gets listened to, which is awesome. And you can reach us on Facebook. We have Retro Movie Love and Cinema to Meep have pages. You can stalk us on there. You can email us, meep@cinemademeep.com. I'm sure you can find Ben Schur and myself on Facebook or on Twitter or something. So stalk us. Let us know what you think about Brian De Palma and what you think we should talk about next in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, guys. Talk soon. Ciao for now.
Red. I might have known it would be red.
It's pink, Mama. What Tommy gave me, Mama. Aren't they beautiful?
I can see your dirty pillows. Everyone will.
Breasts, Mama. They're called breasts.
What sort of men turned you on?
Mature, doctorly type. Like you.
Are you sexually attracted to me?
Yes. Are you?
Attracted to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But then this isn't a social visit, is it? You've come here for help, and my job is to offer you emotional assistance.
How about some sexual assistance? Do you want to fuck me?
Oh, yes.
Well, why don't you?
Because I'm a doctor and...
Fucked a lot of doctors.
And I'm married.
Fucked a lot of them, too.
Hey, I'm not just some fucking stunt cock. I'm an actor.